the day after the college entrance exam. Top students from key high schools across the province were summoned back to their schools for a meeting on score estimation and college application guidance. 36 students considered strong contenders for admission to Tsinghua, Peking, Fuan, and Shanghai Jun universities boarded a bus bound for the Municipal Education Examination Authority. Xin Qingyuan, the top student in her grade, and widely recognized as a top scorer candidate, leaned back in her seat, and softly, "How pitiful! They finally finished the exams, and now they're tied down by their scores, and college applications all day." With that, she had everyone on the bus follow her. After taking photos under the wishing balloons on the popular rooftop, praying at the top scholar temple, and experiencing cooking over a fire at a campsite, the 35 people followed her from one stop to the next. Only I desperately wanted to get off. In my past life, I hadn't gotten off in time, and the whole class missed the college application deadline, while I was left stranded on the mountain road, crushed to pieces, standing on the same bus, looking at Chining's sweet smile. I only wanted to know one thing. You don't want me to bear all this for you. Can your dream of getting into Fan University and taking it easy still come true? Why did you jump? Someone screamed, but I was already rolling down the side of the bus, my palms scraping against gravel, my backpack slamming against my spine. The bus was speeding away, filled with my classmates, all of them following Shining Wan like sheep. She had just smiled her sweet smile and said, "Come on, let's go to the rooftop. Let's light a wish balloon. Let's enjoy this freedom before the rankings come out." And they all cheered, all except me, because I had already died on this day once before. Last time I didn't jump. I stayed on the bus, too afraid to be different, too desperate to be liked, and they took me to the mountain campsite, and I missed my college entrance exam final registration. I was found dead the next morning, crushed under a broken bridge, my exam slip torn in half, my identity erased. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the seat, Shining's voice dripping with sweetness, the same damn lie wrapped in a ribbon. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I looked at her, and I remembered everything. So I waited until the bus turned a corner, and I jumped. The driver didn't stop. She didn't let him stop. "Keep going," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "She clearly doesn't want to be with us. Let her walk back to school if she cares so much." No one asked if I was hurt. No one asked why I jumped. They just watched me disappear in the dust through the back window. And then they turned back to their selfies, their balloons, their borrowed happiness. I got up, blood running down my knee, and started running. The exam registration office was 10 kilometers away. I had exactly 90 minutes before the final cut. I didn't care. I had already survived the worst this time. I would run this time. I would not let her steal my future. I jumped. The bus was still moving, maybe 40 miles per hour, and I didn't wait for it to slow. I had been sitting by the emergency exit for 10 minutes counting. The window latch was loose. I had noticed it last time, too. But last time I hadn't used it. Last time I was still trying to belong. This time I knew better. My body hit the ground like a sack of rocks. I felt my left knee crack. My palm shred against gravel, and my backpack flew off and bounced down the embankment. I landed on my side, rolled twice, and came to a stop in a ditch full of dry grass. The bus didn't stop. I saw Shining Wan's face in the window for just a second. She was sitting in the front row as always, leading everyone. She was smiling. She had seen me fall. She had probably planned this somehow, even though I didn't tell anyone I was going to jump. But she didn't stop the bus. No one did. The bus turned a corner and disappeared behind a hill, leaving me alone on the side of the road, with blood running down my leg. I lay there for a second, staring at the sky. The sky was the same blue as yesterday. The sun was the same. The birds were singing the same stupid song. But I was not the same. I pushed myself up. My hands were bleeding. My knee was screaming. But I had 90 minutes. I grabbed my backpack, limped onto the road, and started running. The exam registration office was at the city education building, 9 kilometers away. 9 kilometers on a wounded leg? Impossible. Some part of me whispered. But that part was the old me, the one who had died before I ran. I passed the sign for the internet-famous rooftop that Chinkingen had planned to take everyone to. The balloons were already being inflated. I saw a cluster of students from another school posing for photos. They didn't even look at me as I limped past them. Sweat and blood mixing. I didn't care. I ran. By the time I reached the first traffic light, my phone buzzed. A group message from Shining One. She was sending photos to the class group. The balloons, the rooftop, the selfies. She had already gathered everyone there. They were laughing. They were free. And I was running alone. Another buzz. A private message from her. Lin Wan. Where are you? We waited for you at the bus stop. I almost laughed. She knew exactly where I was. I didn't answer. I turned into a side street, trying to cut through the university campus to save time. A security guard stopped me, saw my bloodied leg, and asked if I needed help. I showed him my student ID and told him I was trying to get to the registration office. He let me through. I ran faster. 10 minutes to go, and I was still 2 kilometers away. My leg was numb. I didn't feel the pain anymore. I only felt the memory. A bridge. A broken bridge. The bus driving up a mountain road in the dark. Xinqing saying it was a shortcut. The railing giving way. The bus falling. Me thrown from the window. Landing on the rocks below. Waking up. Pinned under the wreckage. My phone dead. My leg broken. Screaming for help as the sky turned dark. No one came. Because no one knew I was there. And the next morning, when the news said 37 students on a field trip killed in a bus accident, no one even said my name right. They spelled it Lin Wan. The same alias Shinkingen had made me use. Because Xinqing Wan wanted my identity. She had been stealing my results for 3 years. My homework. My exam answers. My scholarship applications. And now she had tried to steal my death. But I was alive. I was running. 6 minutes to go. I could see the building ahead. The city education office. Tall. And gray. With the national flag on top. There were maybe 20 students lining up at the entrance. With their parents. Their documents. Their calm faces. I was the only one running. I pushed through the front door. Nearly collapsing at the counter. My knee gave out. I grabbed the edge. Breathing hard. My voice cracked. Lin Wan. I'm here to register for the final exam results filing. The woman behind the counter looked at me like I was crazy. Blood was dripping onto the floor. My face was covered in dirt. My hands were shaking. But I had my backpack. I pulled out my documents. The real ones. The ones I had hidden inside the lining of my backpack. Sewn in by hand. After I woke up in the hospital last time. And realized the truth. My birth certificate. My original admission ticket. My school transcript. Everything they had tried to destroy. The woman looked at my documents. Then back at me. You're the one who called ahead yesterday. I nodded. I had called from a payphone the day before. She stamped my papers. You cut it close. The deadline is in 2 minutes. I know, I said, and I finally let myself smile. But the smile didn't last behind me. The door swung open. Footsteps. Angry voices. Xinqing Wan. Her mother. The school's homeroom teacher. Mr. Jean. They had come back. And they looked furious. I turned around, still holding my stamped documents, and faced the 3 people standing in the office doorway. Shinkingen looked different than she did in the group photos. She was no longer smiling. Her face was pale. Her eyes sharp. Her voice thin. Lin Wan. What are you doing here? Her mother stood beside her. A tall woman in a designer coat, holding a designer handbag. With the cold, calculating eyes of someone who had always gotten what she wanted. Mr. Zhang stood behind them looking uncomfortable. He had always favored Xinqing Wan. She was the good student, the face of the school, the hope for Tsinghua. But I knew the truth. I held up my registration slip. I'm doing what you tried to stop me from doing. Xinqing stepped forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. Don't make a scene. Lin Wan. We can talk outside. I'm not going anywhere. I said. I'm already registered. The deadline is over. Her mother's eyes narrowed. Lin Wan. Why are you being so difficult? Tsinghua only wanted to take everyone out to relax after the exam. You chose to leave the group. That's on you. Don't try to make her look bad. Because of her own decision. My hands were still shaking from the run. But I kept my voice steady. I chose to leave. And I also chose to register. She chose to take everyone to a rooftop instead. That's a choice. Too. Mr. Jean cleared his throat. Linwan, it's true that you decided to jump off the bus. That's not Xinwan's fault. She was just trying to help everyone relax. But now you're making a big scene in front of the staff here. Do you want to get a record? I looked at him. I had always respected Mr. Jean. He had taught me for 3 years. But now, standing there defending Shinkingen, while I bled on the floor, I realized he had never been on my side. She stopped the bus driver. When I jumped, I said quietly. She didn't tell him to stop. She didn't ask if I was okay. She told him to keep going. You can check the bus's GPS. An engine log. Shinking's face flickered. She hadn't expected me to know that. The woman at the counter had been watching. She slowly set down the stamp and said, "We can request the bus company to provide logs. But that would take time." "Good," I said. "I have time. I'm already registered." Shinking's mother grabbed her shoulder and leaned close to her ear. "Where is the other document?" she hissed. "The one you prepared?" I heard it. My ears were sharper now. Death made you pay attention. Shinking's hand went to her pocket. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, and I recognized it instantly. My fake admission ticket, the one she had used last time to impersonate me. She unfolded it and handed it to Mr. Jean. "I don't know why Linwan is accusing me," she said, her voice sweet again. "But I have my own registration slip. I was going to submit it after the event. I didn't know she would run off like this. I was worried about her, so I came here to check." Mr. Jean looked at the paper. "This looks correct," he said slowly. "It's not," I said. "That's a forgery. She printed it herself. It has the wrong ID number and the wrong registration code." Shining's mother grabbed my arm. "Don't you dare. You little liar. You're just jealous of my daughter." I pulled my arm back. "I'm not jealous. I have the real document, which I just submitted, and I have proof of her forgery." The room went quiet. The woman at the counter asked, "What proof?" I wasn't bluffing. Before I left for the bus that morning, I had done something I never thought I'd need to do. I had taken photos of everything in my backpack, including my real admission ticket, and I had checked the desk in the classroom, where Shining One used to sit during study hall. Last time, I had found a hidden USB drive in that desk after she left. This time, I had recovered it the day before. "Her school computer folder has a template for forged documents," I said, including a blank admission ticket, with my name and her photo. "I saw it yesterday. You can check the school's computer logs." Shinking's face went white. Her mother said that's a lie. "Call the school IT department." I said. "They'll know." Mr. Zhang hesitated. He looked at Shining One, then at me for the first time. I saw doubt in his eyes. "I'll call," he said quietly. Shining's mother started screaming. "You can't do this. We donated to this school my husband works with the board." But Mr. Zhang was already dialing. I stood there, blood drying on my knee, watching Shining's mask crack piece by piece, and I finally understood. This time I was not the victim. I was the witness, and the truth was the only weapon I needed. The phone call lasted 7 minutes. Mr. Jean stepped outside the registration office, his voice low and muffled through the glass door. I could see his face through the window. He frowned, nodded, frowned again. Shinking's mother paced in front of the counter like a trapped animal. Shinching stood still, her eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't look at me. I leaned against the wall, my legs shaking. The adrenaline was fading, and the pain was returning. I had run 9 kilometers on a wounded leg. I had bled on the floor. I had screamed my name at a counter. And now I was waiting for a phone call to decide my future. But I had already decided my future the moment I jumped. The door opened. Mr. Zhang walked back in, his face heavy. The school IT department confirmed it. He said the file was created 3 days ago. It was stored on a USB drive registered to the school library computer that Shinkingen used during study hall on Tuesday. The file contains a forged admission ticket with Linu's name and Shining was photo. Shinking's mother stopped pacing. "That's impossible. Xing would never do that. The logs don't lie," Mr. Zhang said. "The file was created at 4:32 p.m. The USB was registered to student Xinqing. The printer log also shows that a document matching the description was printed at 4:08 p.m. And we have 3 witnesses who saw you at the printer station in the library that day." Shining's face was completely white. I had never seen her like this. She was always so controlled, so perfect, so untouchable. But now she looked like a statue that had been cracked by a hammer. "Qinwan," Mr. Zhang said, his voice disappointed. "Tell me this isn't true." She didn't answer. Her mother grabbed her arm. "Say something." Xinqing opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The woman at the counter looked at me. "You were right. The document she submitted is fraudulent. It won't be accepted." Xinqing's mother turned to me, her eyes burning. "You set her up. You planted that file. You did this to ruin her." "No," I said calmly. "I didn't. She did it herself. I just found it. I just waited." "Why would you do this?" Xinqing whispered, finally looking at me. I looked at that face, the face that had smiled while I jumped off a bus, the face that had laughed while they took selfies on the rooftop, the face that had watched me die in a previous life. "Because you try to steal my future." I said. "That's not true. You try to steal my admission, my identity, my life." She shook her head, tears starting to fall. "I didn't mean to." But I didn't let her finish. "You try to steal my death," I said. The room fell silent. Xinqing's mother grabbed her daughter's hand. "We're leaving. We're going to contact a lawyer. This is a misunderstanding. Qinwan, let's go." But Shining Wuan didn't move. She stared at me, her tears silent, her mask completely gone. And I saw something in her eyes that I had never seen before. Fear. Not fear of punishment. Fear of being seen. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I understand everything," I said. "And now everyone else will, too." The woman at the counter handed me a folder. "Your registration is complete, Linwan. You'll receive your official exam results and university match in 2 weeks." I took the folder, held it close to my chest, and walked out of the office behind me. I heard Chining's mother screaming at Mr. Jean, demanding you fix everything. I heard Chining crying. I heard the weight of a life finally breaking. I stepped outside into the afternoon sun and took a deep breath. It was the first clean breath I had taken in 2 lives. The first day back at school was quiet. I expected chaos. I expected shouts, whispers, accusations. I expected Chinking's friends to corner me in the hallway. I expected the teachers to pull me into an office. I expected my parents to show up, demanding I retract my statement. But none of that happened. When I walked through the school gates that Monday, the hallways were empty. A few students glanced at me, then looked away. The bulletin board was blank. The announcements didn't mention my name. And it was a strange kind of silence. Not peace. Tension. The kind that comes before a storm. I went to my classroom. My desk was still there. Someone had drawn a small red circle on my textbook, a target symbol. I didn't react. I just sat down and opened my book. For the first 3 periods, no one sat next to me, even my desk mate. A quiet boy named Lia, who had always been polite, moved to the back of the room. He didn't look at me. No one looked at me. That was fine. I was used to being invisible at noon. I went to the cafeteria alone. I sat at a corner table with my tray, and the students around me stood up and moved away, not dramatically, just quietly, like I had a disease they didn't want to catch. I ate my lunch in peace. At the far end of the cafeteria, I saw Shining Wuan sitting with her usual group, the perfect squad. She was laughing at something, her voice loud and confident again. The mask was back on, but I saw her hands. They were shaking. She knew, and that knowledge kept me calm. In the afternoon, I had a meeting with the school counselor, a routine check-in. They called it the counselor. A middle-aged woman named Ms. Wu asked if I was adjusting well. I told her I was fine. She didn't believe me. "Some of the other students have expressed concerns about your behavior," she said carefully. "They said you left the school trip without warning that you made accusations." "I left the trip to register for my exam results," I said, which was my right. The accusations were based on evidence, which the IT department confirmed. EMS Wu nodded slowly. "Yes, but some students feel that you handle the situation aggressively." I didn't answer. "Linwan, is there anything you want to talk about?" I looked at her. She seemed genuine, but I had learned not to trust teachers. They always chose the side that made their job easier. "No," I said. "I'm Fine." She let me go. That evening, I received the first set of messages. They came from a blocked number. Screenshots of my face edited onto different bodies. A photo of my parents' house. A threat. Drop the case, or we'll make your family pay. I deleted them, without replying. That night, I sat on my bed scrolling through my phone. The class group chat was active. They were planning a celebration party for after the exam results. I was not invited. No one said it out loud. They just didn't include me in the list. I turned off my phone and lay back. In my past life, the silence would have crushed me. I would have cried. I would have apologized. I would have begged them to include me. But now, I understood something. Silence was not rejection. Silence was surrender. They had nothing to say to me, because I had already won. And they knew it. I closed my eyes and let myself sleep. I had 2 weeks until the exam results were released. 2 weeks until the final truth. And I was ready. On Wednesday, I came home to find my mother sitting at the kitchen table, with a notebook and a calculator. She didn't look up. When I walked in, she just said, "Your father, and I need to talk to you." I stopped in the hallway. My backpack felt heavier. I had been avoiding this conversation for almost a week. My parents knew about the incident at the registration office. They had heard from the school. They had probably heard from Shining One's family, too. I walked into the kitchen and sat across from her. "Your teacher called," my mother said, still not looking at me. "He said, you accused one of your classmates of forging documents." I didn't deny it. She did forge documents. That's not the point. My mother finally looked up. Her eyes were tired. "The point is, you've made a scene. Now the school is investigating. Shinching's family is very upset. They have connections. Your father could lose his job." I stared at her. "So, you think I should have just let her steal my identity? I think you should have handled it differently." She said coldly, "You could have told us. We could have dealt with it privately. But you had to be dramatic. You had to jump off a bus and run through the city and make a show of it. I had to register for the exam. I said the deadline was that day. She planned everything, so I would miss it." My mother's lips tightened. "That sounds paranoid." "It's not paranoid. I have evidence." "Evidence doesn't matter when the other family can afford to fight back." I felt something in my chest go cold. "So you want me to drop it?" She didn't answer. I stood up. "I'm not dropping it. She tried to steal my life, and I'm not going to let her get away with it." "Lin Wan." My mother called as I turned to leave. "You're being selfish. Think about your brother. Think about this family." I stopped. I turned around. "I am thinking about myself," I said quietly for the first time in my life. I walked out of the kitchen and went to my room. I locked the door. I sat on my bed and opened my phone. Still no messages from my father. He never got involved. He always let her handle it, because he didn't care either. I had grown up believing I was the problem. That if I was better, quieter, more successful, they would love me. I had spent 17 years trying to be perfect so they would notice me. But last week, when I jumped off that bus, I realized something. They had never seen me. They had only seen a resource. And now that I was fighting back, I was no longer useful. That night, I sent a message to Lou, the only friend from my past life, who tried to help me. I asked her to meet me at school the next day. She replied immediately, "I'm with you." 2 words. That was all I needed. The morning air was cold and wet, the kind of damp that seeps into your bones before you even step outside. I hadn't slept. My phone buzzed with a single notification. Lou's reply from last night, still warm in my chest. "I'm with you." I clung to those 2 words like a lifeline. I slipped out of the house before my mother woke up. She had a habit of pretending the previous night's argument never happened. But I knew she would corner me again before school. I couldn't face that. Not yet. The school gate loomed ahead, gray and indifferent. A cluster of students lingered near the entrance. "There," whispers sharp as broken glass. A few of them glanced at me, then looked away. Word had spread. Lin Wan, the girl who jumped off a bus and ran through the city, the girl who dared to accuse Shining One of forgery. I kept my head down and walked faster. The investigation had begun in earnest yesterday afternoon. The principal, a soft-bellied man named Mr. Tang, had called Shining One and me into his office separately. I had shown him the screenshots I'd kept, the altered registration portal, the timestamp discrepancies, the email log that showed my account being accessed from an IP address registered to Shin Chingwan's father's company. Mr. Tang's face had gone pale. He promised a full inquiry, but promises are cheap in a school, where the Shin family donated the new library. I found Lily waiting for me near the lockers. She was shorter than me, with sharp eyes, and a permanent scowl that hid the loyalty of a guard dog. She handed me a cup of hot tea, without a word. "You look like you fought a ghost," she said quietly. "Close enough." I took the tea. The warmth spread through my fingers. "Did you hear anything?" "Whole school's buzzing. Shining's been crying in the bathroom all morning. Poor rich girl falsely accused. How dare that jealous peasant Lin want to attack her reputation?" Lee's voice dripped with sarcasm. "She's already spun the narrative. You're the bitter scholarship kid who can't handle competition." I bit my lip. "I have evidence." "Doesn't matter. Evidence is only as strong as the people willing to believe it." Lou grabbed my arm. "But someone else came forward. That's why I had to see you before first period." My heart stopped. "Who?" Chin Lily. Chin Lily. The quiet girl in the back row. The one who never spoke, never raised her hand, never made a contact. She was a daughter of the Shin family's housekeeper. If anyone knew the truth, it would be her. "She emailed the investigation committee this morning," Lou whispered. "Said she saw Shin Chingwuan using your login credentials on the night before the deadline. She has screenshots from the family computer." I felt the air leave my lungs. Why would she do that? She works for them. Her mother would lose her job because she's tired of watching that family ruin people. Lou's eyes were fierce. "She came to me first. She wants to talk to you alone." The warning bell rang. Students began to drift toward their classrooms. I stood frozen, the tea growing cold in my hands. Where I asked behind the gymnasium. "Third period." "She's faking sick to avoid pee." I nodded. My throat was dry. "Do you trust her?" Lou paused. "I trust that she has nothing to gain from lying, and everything to lose by telling the truth. That's the kind of person you want as a witness." I turned to go, but Lou caught my sleeve. "One more thing. The school board has already contacted Chinking's father. He's flying in from Beijing tomorrow. This is going to get very ugly. Very fast. Are you sure you want to do this?" I looked at her. In my previous life, the life I had somehow been given a second chance to change. I had backed down. I had let them crush me. I had apologized to Xinqing in front of the whole school. And my mother had smiled, with relief. I had spent the next 10 years drowning in regret. But I had jumped off that bus. I had run through the city. I had already burned the bridge. "I'm sure," I said. Third period came too slowly and too fast. I slipped out of biology class, citing a bathroom emergency, and made my way to the back of the gymnasium. The air smelled of rubber and dust. Chin Lily was already there, hunched against the wall, her hands shaking. She was a thin girl, with hollow cheeks and eyes that had seen too much. Her school uniform was faded, patched at the knees. She looked up as I approached, and I saw raw fear in her face. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "Thank you for what you're doing." I sat down beside her, keeping a careful distance. Lou said, "You have evidence." Chin Lily nodded. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screen recording timestamp dated the night before the registration deadline. The video showed Xinqing Wan sitting at a laptop, smiling as she typed in my student ID and password. The audio was clear. "There now, Lin Wan's spot is mine. She'll miss the exam, and I'll get her scholarship." My hands trembled. This was the smoking gun. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "You know what they'll do to your family." Chin Lily looked down. "My mother has been their housekeeper for 12 years. She cleans their toilets, washes their clothes, raises their children, and they treat her like furniture." Her voice cracked. "Last month, Shinkingen accused her of stealing a bracelet. My mother cried for 3 days. She didn't steal anything. The bracelet was in the trash. Xinqing had thrown it out by accident, but no one apologized." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I've been collecting evidence for 2 years. I knew I'd need it someday. I just didn't know when." She looked up at me, and now there was steel in her gaze. "When I saw you run off that bus, I knew today was the day. I reached out and took her hand. It was cold and small. Then we'll do this together, I said. She smiled. A fragile, broken thing. Together. A noise echoed from the gymnasium entrance. Footsteps. Voices. Someone was coming. Shin Lily's face went white. They can't see me here. If Shinking's friends find out. Go, I said. I'll handle it. She scrambled away, disappearing behind a stack of old wrestling mats. I stood up, brushing the dust from my skirt, and turned to face the intruder. It wasn't Shining One's friends. It was my mother. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face a mask of controlled fury. Beside her was Shining One's personal lawyer, a man in an expensive suit, who looked at me like I was a stain on his shoe. Lin Wan, my mother said, her voice ice. We need to talk right now. Behind them, the school intercom crackled to life. Lin Wan, please report to the principal's office immediately. Lin Wan to the principal's office. The investigation was about to go public. The principal's office had been transformed. What was once a cramped room, with a dusty desk and a wilting plant, now contained a long table, 5 chairs, and a video camera on a tripod. The school board had arrived in force. 3 men in suits, 1 woman, with sharp glasses, and Shinking's lawyer, Mr. Gua, a predator in wool and silk. My mother sat in the corner, arms crossed, radiating disapproval. She hadn't spoken a word to me since dragging me out of the gymnasium. Shining Wan was already there, seated beside her lawyer, looking pale and fragile. She wore a white blouse and no makeup, calculated innocence. When I walked in, she glanced at me, then looked away as if I were beneath her notice. I took the empty chair across from her. Mr. Tang, the principal, stood at the head of the table, sweating through his collar. Let's begin, said the woman on the board, whose nameplate read, Director Su. Her voice was calm, clinical. This is an informal investigation hearing. No legal binding, but the findings will be submitted to the Ministry of Education. We are here to determine whether student Shining Wan knowingly engaged in academic fraud by tampering with student Linux exam registration. Shinking's lawyer leaned forward. Objection. The accusation is baseless and defamatory. My client has no motive to harm MS Lin's registration. They are classmates, and until recently, friends. I bit my tongue. Friends. That was a joke. Let's start with the evidence. Director Su said, Miss Lin, you submitted screenshots showing that your account was accessed from an IP address belonging to Shin Enterprises at 11:47 p.m. on the night before the registration deadline. Can you confirm? Yes, I said. I also have a witness. Shining Wan's eyes flickered. I held her gaze. A witness. Mr. Smile was thin. And who might that be? I took a breath. Shin Lily. She has a screen recording of Shining Wan accessing my account. The room went still. Shining's mask cracked just for a second, a flash of panic before she recovered. That's absurd, she said, her voice trembling with practiced hurt. Shin Lily's mother works for my family. She's clearly biased. She's trying to extort us. She has no reason to lie. I said, she has every reason to lie. Mr. Geward, the Shin family pays her mother's salary. If she's unhappy, she could fabricate evidence to harm my client's reputation. Director Su frowned. We cannot call a witness who is not present. EMS Lin. Where is Jean Lily? I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could speak, the door opened. Shin Lily walked, and she was trembling, but her head was high in her hands. She held a folder, the same one from the gymnasium. She had changed. She had put on her best uniform, the one she saved for graduation. Ceremonies. I'm here, she said, her voice clear. I have the evidence. Shining's face drained of color. Mr. Gu stood up. This is irregular. The witness should have been vetted before. Sit down. Mr. Gua, Director Su said, her tone sharp. Let the girl speak. Shin Lily walked to the table and placed the folder in front of Director Su. Inside was a USB drive and several printed screenshots. That recording, she said, pointing, was made on my personal phone. You can check the metadata. It shows Shining Wan logging into Linux account using a password she had copied from the school's internal system. I heard her bragging about it to her friends the next day. Shinking's composure shattered. "You liar! You stole that from my house. You're just a maid's daughter." The room went quiet. The contempt in her voice hung in the air like smoke. Director Seuss' eyes narrowed. "Miss Shun, did you just refer to this witness as a maid's daughter?" Shinkingen opened her mouth, then shut it. Her lawyer put a hand on her arm. "But the damage was done. That's enough," Director Seuss said. "We will review the evidence. In the meantime, Miss Shin, you are suspended from all academic activities pending the outcome of this investigation. And Ms. Lin, your registration will be restored retroactively. You will be allowed to sit for the exam." I felt a wave of relief, so strong it almost buckled my knees. But Shin Ching-wan was not done. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't over. My father will hear about this. He will destroy the school if he has to." "Then let him try," I said, and my voice didn't shake. She stared at me, and for the first time, I saw real hatred in her eyes. Then she turned and walked out, followed by her lawyer. My mother rose from her corner. She looked at me, and something in her expression shifted. Not warmth, not pride, but a grudging respect. "You've made enemies," she said. "I know your father will lose his job. I know." She paused. Then very slowly, she nodded. "I won't stand in your way anymore." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't love. But it was a start. I turned to Chin Lily. She was crying, silently, tears streaming down her face. I took her hand. "Thank you," I whispered. "We're not done yet." She said, "Shin Ching won't give up. And there's something else." She leaned in close, her voice barely audible. "I heard her on the phone last night. She said she's planning something for the exam day. Something that will make sure you never walk into that exam hall." My blood ran cold. "Then we'll be ready," I said. But deep in my chest, a warning bell was ringing. This was far from over that night. I couldn't sleep. The dormitory walls were thin enough that I could hear the muffled sobs of a first-year student down the hall. Someone else caught in the wreckage of shining one's empire. My phone buzzed every few minutes. But I ignored it. Unknown numbers, threatening texts, even a voicemail from an untraceable number that said asterisk dropout or your mother's shop burns down. I deleted it, without playing it a second time. Chin Lily had stayed, with me until midnight, whispering plans over cold tea. She knew the terrain of the university better than anyone. She had cleaned every floor, filed every record, lied for every favor. And now she was using that knowledge for us. Shinchin will use her father's influence to place security guards at every entrance, she had said, tracking the path, with her finger on a napkin. The main gate, the sports hall, the library, but there's a side door near the old boiler room. It's been locked for years, but I have a key. How did you get it? She had smiled. A thin, bitter thing. I cleaned the janitor's office. He didn't notice it missing for a week. And by then, he thought he just lost it. I had stared at her. "You've been planning this for a long time." "Yes." Her voice had been flat. I knew one day I'd need a way in or a way out. "No." Alone in the dark. I turned those words over in my mind. Chin Lily had been a ghost in this university for 4 years. Everyone saw her uniform, her mop, her silence. No one saw her watching. No one saw her waiting. I didn't know if I could trust her completely, but I had no one else. At 2:17 a.m., I made a decision. I got up, pulled on a dark hoodie, and slipped out of the dormitory. The campus was quiet under a half moon, the kind of silence that felt like a held breath. I kept to the shadows, my heart pounding against my ribs until I reached the old administrative building, where Director Sue's office was. I didn't knock. I used the emergency code Chin Lily had given me, a 6-digit number that had once belonged to a scholarship fund, now repurposed for after-hours access. The lock clicked open. Inside, the smell of stale coffee, and old paper. I moved quickly to Director Sue's desk, pulled open the bottom drawer, where I had seen her file cabinet key. It was still there. I unlocked the cabinet, found the folder marked Shinchin, Academic Misconduct Investigation, and slid out the contents. I didn't need to steal anything. I just needed to take photos. But when I opened the folder, I froze. There were screenshots, transcripts, emails, And at the very bottom, a single photograph, yellowed, creased, dated 10 years ago. It showed a young girl in a cheap school uniform standing next to a woman with a mop. The girl was Chin Lily. The woman was her mother. And behind them in the corner of the frame was a teenage boy with a familiar smirk, Shinking's older brother, who had died in a car accident 5 years ago. I stared at the photograph, my mind racing. What did this have to do with the case? Why was it in this folder? A sound behind me. I spun around hard in my throat. The door was still closed. The hallway was empty, but I could feel it. Someone watching. I shoved the folder back, locked the cabinet, and slipped out into the night. As I ran back to the dormitory, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just opened a door that should have stayed shut. The next morning, Chin Lily was waiting for me at breakfast. She looked paler than usual, dark circles under her eyes. "Did you sleep?" I asked. "No." She pushed a cup of tea toward me. "I went to the hospital. My mother is worse." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She's the reason I'm doing this. She worked for Shining was family for 15 years. She knows secrets, but she's too scared to speak." I thought of the photograph. What kind of secrets? Chin. Lily looked around, then leaned forward. Shinking's brother. He didn't die in an accident. He was murdered. The word hit me like a slap. What? I don't have proof. But my mother was there the night it happened. She saw Shining Wan's father arguing with him. The next morning, the car was found at the bottom of a ravine. They said it was a drunk driving accident. But my mother said the boy didn't drink. He was terrified of his father. I set down my tea, my hands suddenly cold. Why didn't she go to the police? Because Shining Wan's father owns the police. Or he did back then. Now he's a senator. He's untouchable. She met my eyes. But you're different. You have nothing to lose. And you already made an enemy of him. I wanted to deny it, but she was right. The moment I stood up in that hearing, I had signed a death warrant for my family's safety. What do you want me to do? I asked. Expose him. Use the hearing. Leak it to the press. I have more evidence. Bank records. Phone logs. A witness who saw the argument. But I need you to be the voice. Because no one will believe a maid's daughter. The title hung in the air between us. Maid's daughter. The same words Shining Wan had spotted her in the hearing. I believe you, I said. Chin Lily's eyes welled up, but she blinked the tears away. Then we have a deal. I get you into the exam hall, and you help me bury the Shin family for good. I nodded, but even as we shook hands, I knew the real battle hadn't started yet. The exam was in 3 days. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to survive. That afternoon, I went to find my father. He was at the construction site, where he worked covered in dust and sweat. When he saw me, his face went through a dozen emotions in 2 seconds. Anger, worry, relief, then anger again. "You shouldn't be here," he said, pulling me aside. "The foreman already told me. I'm fired." "I know. I'm sorry." He rubbed his face with a dirty hand. "Your mother called. She said you went to the hearing. Said you made a scene. I had to. Had to." His voice cracked. "Linwan, do you understand what you've done? Shinking's father is a senator. He can destroy our entire family. Your mother's shop, your brother's job, my pension, everything. I understand. Then why?" He was almost shouting now. "Why couldn't you just let it go? The exam. You could have taken it next year. You could have transferred. You could have survived. Because surviving isn't living." I said quietly, "And I'm tired of living like a ghost in my own life." He stared at me for a long moment. We just looked at each other. Then he sagged, the anger draining out of him. "Your mother told me she's letting you do this." "Yes. She's a fool. And so am I." He looked down at his hands. "I'll talk to the union. Maybe they can find me another job. But I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If it gets too dangerous, if you feel like you're going to lose, you run. You run. And you don't look back. Understand?" "I understand. But I didn't mean it. I wasn't going to run. Not anymore." That night, Chin Lily and I met in the boiler room. She had a map of the campus spread out on a crate, marking every security camera, every guard post, every locked door. "The exam starts at 8 a.m., she said. "But the gates open at 6:30. Shining's father has hired private security to patrol the main entrance. They have photos of you. They will stop you on sight. So, I don't use the main entrance. Right. You use this. She tapped a point on the map. The old boiler room exit leading to a service alley behind the sports hall. The door hasn't been used in 3 years. The lock is rusty, but the key should still work. I'll be here at 6 a.m. to open it. You'll have exactly 12 minutes to cross the alley, enter the sports hall through the emergency exit, and take the stairs to the exam hall on the second floor. That's the only route that avoids the security cameras. What about the guards? There's one guard on the second floor. He's new. He doesn't know your face, but he'll check your ID card. You need a valid student ID, not the temporary one. Xin destroyed my original ID. Xin Lily smiled. I know. That's why I made you a new one. She pulled out a card from her pocket. It looked exactly like the university-issued IDs. My photo, my name, my student number. But the hologram was slightly off. It's a forgery, I said. The best I could do. With a printer in the janitor's closet, it should pass a quick glance. But if the guard looks too closely... Auer took the card. It felt solid in my hand. Real. Why are you risking so much for me? I asked. Xin Lily's expression flickered. Because you're the first person who looked at me and didn't see a maid's daughter. You saw a witness. You saw a friend. I wanted to say something. Thank her. Hug her. Promise her the world. But instead I just nodded. Because words felt too small. We spent the next 2 nights in that boiler room rehearsing the route. I timed myself. 12 minutes was tight. 1 wrong turn. And I'd be caught. 1 guard looking the wrong way. And the whole plan collapsed. On the night before the exam, my mother called. Your father lost his job, she said, but he found something temp. It's less money, but we'll manage. I know. He told me. There was a pause. Then her voice softer than I had ever heard it. Linwan. I was wrong about Qinxingwan. About everything. I thought if I kept my head down, I could protect you. But I see now that I was just teaching you to be afraid. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay. But I want you to know I'm proud of you. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm proud. I had to choke back a sob. Thank you. Go get your dreams. Linwan. And don't let anyone steal them again. I aged up and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in months, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Hope. But hope didn't change the fact that the next morning, I would be running through a campus full of enemies, and Xin was planning something. Something that would make sure I never walked into that exam hall. I just didn't know what. At 5:30 a.m., I woke up. Dawn was still gray, the air cold and damp. I put on a pair of nondescript clothes, dark jeans, a plain jacket, a baseball cap pulled low. I tucked the forged ID into my sock just in case Xin Lily was waiting at the boiler room door. She had a crowbar in her hand, and her face was tense. There's a problem, she said. My heart dropped. What the? Security patrols have increased. There are 2 guards stationed at the sports hall now. 1 at the front, 1 at the emergency exit. I didn't account for that. Then the plan is dead? No. She handed me a key. There's another route through the underground tunnel. It connects the old maintenance shed to the exam hall basement. The tunnel floods during heavy rain, but it's been dry for a week. You'll have to crawl through about 50 m of mud, but it's your only way. I stared at the key. How do you know about this? I cleaned the maintenance shed. The janitor told me it was a secret passage used during the Cultural Revolution to hide documents. No one uses it now. I took the key. It was cold, rusted, and heavier than it looked. You'll need to go now, she said. The guards change at 7 a.m. You have a window of 8 minutes. I hugged her. I'll see you on the other side. Be careful. Linwan. Shinkingen hasn't made a move yet. That means she's waiting. I nodded and slipped out into the dawn. The maintenance shed was a crumbling building behind the chemistry block. The door was padlocked, but the key opened it, with a groan of reluctant metal. Inside, the floor was covered in dust and broken glass. In the corner, a metal grate covered a hole in the ground. I pulled it open. A dark shaft descended into the earth. I could smell damp soil and something metallic, rust maybe, or old pipes. I didn't have time to be afraid. I lowered myself into the hole, feet first, and let go. I landed hard on white ground. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for my shoulders. I had to crawl on my hands and knees, the mud soaking through my jeans. The darkness was absolute. I could only feel forward, in being, my breath loud in the confined space. I counted my moves, 20, 30, 50. My palms were raw, my knees ached, but I kept going. Then I heard something up ahead. A voice. No, not a voice. A sound like someone dragging something heavy. I froze. The tunnel deadened. Or was there someone else down here? I pressed myself against the wall, trying to be silent. The sound grew closer. A scraping. A shuffling. Then a light flickered. The beam of a flashlight. Come out. Lean one. A voice said it was female. Cold. Familiar. Shinkingen. I knew you'd try the tunnel. Shin Lily isn't the only one. Who knows this campus? I've had my people watching the maintenance shed for 3 days. I didn't answer. My mind raced. The tunnel was supposed to be secret. How did she know? You think you're clever? Shinshin continued. You think a maid's daughter and a dead girl can beat me? My father owns the city. He owns the police. He owns the university. You'll never make it to the exam hall. I felt for the key in my pocket. Still there. But what good was it if she was blocking the exit? Then I remembered Shin Lily's words. The tunnel floods during heavy rain. But it's been dry for a week. Heavy rain. It hadn't rained in days. But what if I could make it flood? I scrambled backward, feeling for a pipe or a valve. My hand hit a metal wheel. An old water shut-off valve. I twisted it. With all my strength. It screeched, but turned. A terrible groaning sound echoed through the tunnel. Then water. Muddy. Cold water gushed from somewhere above. Shinkingen screamed. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I just kept twisting. The water rose fast. It reached my waist, my chest. I was swimming now, the current pulling me toward the exit, and toward Shinshinwan. I could see her flashlight flickering, her face twisted in rage and fear. You'll drown us both, she shouted. Then you should have stayed above ground. I let go of the valve and let the current carry me. The water slammed into Shining One, knocking her flashlight away. In the darkness, I grabbed her wrist, not to hurt her, but to use her as a shield. I pushed past her toward the grate at the end of the tunnel. I found the ladder, climbed it, and emerged into the basement of the exam hall. I was soaked, covered in mud, and my heart was pounding like a drum. But I was here. I checked my watch. 6:58 a.m. The exam started in 1 hour. I didn't have time to change. I wrung out my shirt, wiped the mud off my face, and ran up the stairs. The exam hall was a large auditorium, with rows of desks. Students were already filing in, wearing crisp uniforms, carrying brand new calculators. I must have looked like a disaster. But the proctor didn't stop me. He just glanced at my ID, the forged one, and waved me through. I took my seat, and then the clock started ticking. I picked up my pen. My hand was steady behind me. I heard the door open. A commotion. Voices. Then Shining Wan's voice. Loud. And frantic. That girl. She attacked me. She tried to drown me in the tunnel. She should be arrested. The exam hall went silent. The proctor looked at me, then at her mission. If you have a complaint, please take it to the administration. She doesn't belong here. Her ID is fake. The proctor sighed, walked over to my desk. May I see your identification again? I handed it over. He examined it. Then he looked at Shining One, who was still dripping wet, her expensive clothes ruined. The ID appears valid, he said, and the exam has begun. Mission, please take your seat or leave the hall. Shining's face went red. You'll regret this. All of you. She turned and stormed out. I took a deep breath. The exam was 4 hours long. I had studied for this moment for 2 years. I had lost friends, family, and almost my sanity. But sitting there, pen in hand, I felt a strange calm. I was going to pass. I was going to win. And then I would burn Shin Chingwan's family to the ground. The exam ended at noon. I handed in my paper, my fingers cramping from writing so fast. Every word I had poured onto the page felt like a piece of my soul. Hours of stolen study, nights of relentless pressure, the weight of a family's hope. I walked out of the hall into the blinding sunlight. Shin Lily was waiting for me under a tree, her face pale, with anxiety. You made it, She breathed. We're halfway there. I looked around. Any trouble? Xin was arrested. I stopped. What? After she left the exam hall. She went straight to her father's office. But someone had leaked the recording of the hearing to the press. It's all over the news. Senator's daughter calls witness a maid's daughter caught on tape. Her father is in damage control. He's trying to distance himself from her. I felt a surge of disbelief. Who leaked it? Xin Lily smiled. I did. I sent it to every journalist in the city last night. I had it on my phone. I stared at her. You did that. I told you I had a plan. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded newspaper. The headline read, Senator's daughter caught in academic fraud scandal. University suspends investigation. This isn't over. I said. But it's a start. There's more. Xin Lily's voice dropped. I got a call this morning. A lawyer contacted me. He says he represents anonymous donors who want to fund a full investigation into the Xin family's financial crimes. They've been looking for a whistleblower, and they think you're it. I blinked. Why me? Because you're the first person who ever fought back, and people have noticed. I didn't know what to say. My whole life I had been invisible. A shadow. A girl who kept her head down and survived. And now I was someone. I need to call my parents. I said, do it later. There's something else. She handed me a small thumb drive. This is a copy of the evidence my mother collected over 15 years. Bank statements, recorded calls, photographs, everything that linked Shining One's father to the death of his son, to the cover-up of the accident, to the bribes that got his daughter into university. I took the drive. It felt impossibly light for something so heavy. What do I do with it? You give it to the right people. The news is one thing, but this is a bomb. I nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't let her win. I spent the next few days in a blur. The university reinstated my registration permanently. Director Su issued a public apology. Not to me, but to the integrity of the academic process. It wasn't personal, but it was something. My father found a new job, a small construction crew that didn't ask questions. My mother's shop saw a sudden increase in customers. Some were curious, some were supportive. She didn't know how to handle the attention, but she didn't complain. And I studied, because even with all the chaos, the national exam was only the first step. I needed to get into a good university. I needed to prove that I wasn't just a survivor. I was a winner. But Xin wasn't done. I knew that the day I saw a black sedan parked outside my dormitory. 2 men in suits sat inside watching the building. I didn't tell Xin Lily. I didn't want to worry her. Instead, I made a plan. I went to the library and used a public computer to send an encrypted email to the lawyer who had contacted Xin Lily. I attached a copy of the thumb drive, but not the whole thing, just enough to prove I had it. Ask if something happens to me asterisk. I wrote the full file will be released to every news outlet in the world. I have a dead man's switch. I didn't actually have one. But they didn't need to know that the next morning the black sedan was gone. I knew I had bought time. But time was all I needed. 3 weeks later, the results of the national exam were released. I sat in my dormitory, refreshing the page on my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The screen loaded. My name, Lin Wan, score 723 out of 750, top 1% send in the country. I stared at the numbers. Then I started laughing. Hysterical. Tear-streaked. Ugly laughter that turned into sobbing. I had done it. I had made it. The phone rang. It was Jean Lily. Did you see? I saw. You're going to Peking University. We're going to Peking University. There was a pause. Then she whispered, I didn't take the exam. What? I couldn't afford to. I had to work. But I don't mind. I have a plan. I'm going to use the lawyer's money to start a foundation for kids like us. Kids who get trapped by people like the Shins. I felt a pang of guilt. You should have told me. You had enough to worry about. And this is what I want. I want to make sure no one else has to go through what we went through. You're amazing. Xin Lily. So are you. Lin Wan. Now go pack your bags. University starts in 2 months. I hung up and looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the campus. In the distance, I could see the exam hall, the building, where I had fought and won. But I knew the real fight was just beginning. Shining's father had been arrested for bribery and obstruction of justice. The investigation was still ongoing. There were rumors that he might flee the country. There were also rumors that he would kill anyone who testified against him. I was on the witness list the night before I left for Beijing. A package arrived at my dormitory. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, the same one I had seen in Director Su's file. Chin Lily and her mother, with Shining Wan's brother in the background. But this time, someone had circled the face of the brother on the back in red ink. He didn't die in an accident. He was pushed, and someone saw. I turned the photograph over and over. There was no signature, no clue. But I knew who had sent it. The next morning, I boarded the train to Beijing. I sat by the window, watching the city shrink into the distance. I had a new phone, a new address, and a new life waiting for me. But I also had a dead man's switch, a folder full of evidence, and a promise to a dead boy I had never met. I was going to be a student, but first I was going to be a weapon. Section 7. The weight of a name. The train rattled northward through the night, carrying me away from everything I had ever known. He said, with my back against the cold window, the photograph tucked inside my jacket pocket pressed against my heart like a second skin. The dead man's switch, the encrypted file I had set to auto-publish if I failed to check in every 72 hours, was already configured. If I died, the world would know everything. If I lived, I would decide when to pull the trigger. I had not slept in 36 hours. The compartment was nearly empty. An old woman in the corner seat knitted by the dim light, her needles clicking like the ticking of a bomb. A young man across from me scrolled through his phone, the blue glow illuminating his tired face. None of them looked at me. None of them knew that the girl in the plain gray jacket was carrying enough evidence to bring down a dynasty. The Shin family was not just wealthy. They were a web, a network of judges, police captains, land developers, and politicians that stretched across 3 provinces. Shinqing was father. Xinyue had been arrested, but his brother, Xinyue, was still free, and Xinyue controlled the southern ports. He had friends in customs and the procurie and the military. I had no idea how deep the rot went, but I knew one thing. Someone had sent me that photograph. Someone inside the system. Someone who wanted me to know that the brother's death had not been an accident. And if that person was willing to reach out to a 17-year-old girl, they must be desperate, or they were setting me up. The train arrived in Beijing at dawn. The station was enormous, a cathedral of glass, and steel-filled, with the noise of announcements, rolling suitcases, and crying children. I stepped onto the platform and felt the cold air hit my face. It smelled of coal dust, and diesel, and possibility. I had never been this far south before. The capital was supposed to be a symbol of opportunity, but to me it felt like a battlefield. I checked my phone. No messages. I had given Chin Lily my new number, but she said she would contact me only when it was safe. I didn't know what safe meant anymore. The university had arranged for new students to be picked up at the station. I found the Peking University banner crowded, with families, and suitcases, and proud parents taking photos. I stood alone. No one took my picture. No one hugged me. Goodbye. A young woman, with a clipboard, approached me. Lin Wan. I nodded. I'm your senior advisor. Welcome to PKU. She smiled warmly, but her eyes were sharp. She glanced at my single duffel bag. Is this all you brought? I travel light. She laughed. You'll need more than that for the Beijing winter. Don't worry. We have a student store. I'll show you around after registration. We walked through the campus, past red brick buildings covered in ivy, past Wamming Lake shimmering under the morning sun. It looked like a postcard, but I couldn't enjoy it. I kept scanning the crowds, looking for faces that didn't belong. Black sedans, men in suits. So far, nothing. Registration took 2 hours. I was assigned to a dormitory in Building 28, a 6-story concrete block that smelled of instant noodles and damp laundry. My roommates had already arrived. One was a tall, confident girl from Shanghai named Wang Su. She wore designer sneakers and spoke with an air of entitlement. Her father was a doctor. Her mother was a lawyer. She had scored 689 on her Gallo for points lower than me. and she seemed determined to prove she was smarter. The other was a quiet, round-faced girl from rural Gansu named Wang. She had never been outside her province before. She stared at the city lights, with wide, terrified eyes. 3 beds, 1 room, 10 square meters of shared space. I chose the top bunk by the window. It gave me a view of the entrance that night. I lay awake, listening to Veng Su snore, and Luong whisper prayers under her breath. The photograph was under my pillow. The dead man's switch was set. I thought about Chin Lily. I thought about the boy in the picture I had never met. I thought about Director Su, who had been transferred to an unknown location for his own safety. And I thought about Xinqing Wuan. She had been quiet since her father's arrest. No social media posts. No court appearances. The news said she was under house arrest. But I didn't believe it. The Shin family had too many resources. She could be anywhere. She could be in Beijing. The first week of orientation was a blur of speeches, campus tours, and icebreaker games. I smiled when I was supposed to. I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny. I let Wangu take the lead in group discussions, playing the role of the quiet, unassuming freshman. But I was watching, always watching. On the 3rd day, I found a note slipped under my dormitory door. It was printed on plain white paper. No signature asterisk. The witness protection program is a lie. They will find you. Run. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. I didn't run. I couldn't run. Running would mean giving up the only advantage I had. The dead man's switch. As long as I was alive, the evidence was safe. But if I disappeared, if I stopped checking in, the files would be released to every major news outlet in the country. It was a nuclear option, and I wasn't ready to use it yet. Instead, I started mapping the campus. I found every exit, every blind spot, every security camera. I memorized the patrol schedule of the campus guards. I bought a burner phone and a prepaid SIM card, and I started looking for the person who had sent me the photograph. It was Lu Tong, who gave me the first clue. We were eating dinner in the cafeteria, steamed buns, and pickled vegetables, when she leaned in and whispered, "There's a man outside the library. He's been there every day for a week." I didn't look up. What does he look like? Middle-aged, black jacket. He smokes a lot. Yesterday, I saw him take a picture of the East Gate. My heart rate didn't change. I had expected this. "Thank you, Luong. Don't follow him. Don't talk to him if he approaches you. Tell him you don't know me." She nodded, her eyes wide, with fear. She didn't ask questions. She knew better than to ask. After dinner, I walked to the library. I didn't go inside. Instead, I circled the building, staying in the shadows, watching the man from behind a hedge. He was exactly as Luton described. Black jacket, worn leather shoes. He leaned against a lamppost, cigarette burning between his fingers, and stared at the East Gate with the patience of a predator. I took a photo of him with my burner phone. Then I sent it to a number I had memorized, the only number I trusted. The reply came 5 minutes later. "That's Shin WOA's right hand. Name, Zia. Former military police. 3 arrests for coercion. Never convicted. Be careful." I didn't know who the contact was. I had found them through an encrypted forum frequented by journalists and activists. They had helped me before, verifying the authenticity of the photograph. They never asked for my name. I never asked for theirs, but they clearly had access to information that the police didn't. I watched Xiaohui for another hour. He lit a second cigarette, then a third. He never moved. He was waiting for someone. He was waiting for me that night. I changed my routine. I ate at different times. I took different paths to class. I never walked alone after dark. And I started carrying a small can of pepper spray that Chin Lily had mailed me before I left. But I also started working. I enrolled in a computer science elective which gave me access to the university's computer lab. The lab was old, filled with clunky desktops that ran on outdated software. But the network was fast, and the lab was empty at night. I began digging. I searched for records of Xinhua's ports. I traced shell companies through layers of proxies, following the money like a blood trail. It was slow work. I was not a hacker. I was just a girl, with time, determination, and a burning need for justice. But I found something, a shipping manifest from 3 years ago. a container labeled construction equipment that had never reached its destination. Instead, it had been rerouted to a private dock owned by a subsidiary of Shin Industries. The contents were listed as metal piping, but the weight didn't match. The container was too heavy. I referenced the date. It was 2 weeks after Shinking's brother had died. My hands trembled as I saved the file to a USB drive. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it meant something. On the 10th day, I received a second package. It was delivered to the dormitory office by a courier who didn't remember who had hired him. The package was small, about the size of a book. Inside was a voice recorder and a note. The witness is ready to talk. Meet at the South Gate. Midnight. Come alone. It was a trap. I knew it was a trap, but I also knew that the witness, if they existed, could be the key to everything. The person who had seen the brother push the one who had sent the photograph. They had been silent for so long. Why now? Perhaps they knew I was in Beijing. Perhaps they were running out of time. I made a decision. I would go to the meeting, but I would not go alone. I called the only person I could trust, the contact on the forum. I asked for backup. They said they would send someone at 11:45 p.m. I left the dormitory. I wore black clothes. I carried the pepper spray, the USB drive, and my burner phone. I had set the dead men's switch to a 1-hour timer. If I didn't call to reset it, by 1 a.m. the files would be released. The campus was quiet. The autumn wind blew through the trees, scattering leaves across the path. The streetlights cast pools of yellow light on the pavement. I walked toward the South Gate. I saw a figure standing in the shadows. Tall male. He was wearing a long coat and a hat pulled low over his face. He stepped forward. Lin Wan. His voice was rough like gravel. Who are you? Someone who wants to help, but we don't have much time. He glanced over his shoulder. They know you're here. They've been watching you since you arrived. Who? Shingo's men. Zia is only the beginning. There are others. They're waiting for you to make a mistake. Why are you helping me? Because I knew the boy Shinming. He was my student when I taught at the university in Nanjing. He was a good kid. He didn't deserve to die. My breath caught. You were his teacher. I was his ethics professor. He came to me a week before he died. He said he had found something about his family's business. He was scared. I told him to go to the police. The man's voice cracked. The next day, he was dead. Accident, they said. But I knew the truth. Why didn't you come forward? Because I had a family. Because I was a coward. He pulled out an envelope. This is everything I have. Documents. Recordings. A sworn statement from the dock worker who saw Shinming being pushed. It's enough to reopen the case. I reached for the envelope, and then I heard the engine. A black van screeched around the corner, headlights blazing. Tires screamed on the asphalt. The van skidded to a stop 10 meters away, and 3 men jumped out. The professor grabbed my arm. Run. We ran. We sprinted across the campus lawn, past the library, past the dormitories. The men chased us, their footsteps pounding behind us. I could hear them shouting into radios. The professor was fast for his age. He led me through a narrow alley between 2 buildings into a maze of maintenance sheds and trash bins. We ducked behind a generator, gasping for air. They'll find us, he whispered. We need to split up. You take the envelope. I'll lead them away. No, you'll be killed. I've already lived with the guild for 3 years. If I die tonight, at least I die trying to fix what I should have fixed long ago. He shoved the envelope into my hands. Then he stood up and ran in the opposite direction, shouting to draw their attention. I heard the men shout. I heard the sound of a scuffle, then a gunshot. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stop myself from screaming. I waited. I counted seconds. I counted heartbeats. When I was sure they were gone, I crawled up from behind the generator and ran back toward the dormitory. I didn't look back. At 12:58 a.m., I reached my room. I locked the door. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall. The envelope clutched to my chest. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were photographs, bank statements, a handwritten letter from a dock worker named Le Chang, describing how he had seen Xinghua's brother, Xinghua himself, and a man in a suit pushing Ming off the dock into the water. The boy had struggled. The men had laughed. And then they had watched him drown. I cried. I cried for Shinming, a boy I had never known. I cried for Chin Lily, who had sacrificed her future to help me. I cried for the professor, who might be dead, because of me. And then I stopped crying. I picked up my phone. I called the number. The files are ready. I said, I have a witness statement. I have a confession. The voice on the other end was calm. Hold on to them. The time is not right yet. When will it be right? When you are ready to face what comes next. I hung up. I looked at the envelope. I looked at the photograph of Shinming, his smiling face frozen in time. Then I opened my laptop and began to prepare. The war had begun, but I was no longer just a weapon. I was the hand that wielded it. Section 8. The Ghost in the Machine. The professor's death made the news. The next morning, he was found in a ditch near the university's south wall, shot twice in the chest. The police called it a robbery gone wrong. They said he had been followed by a street gang. They said it was a tragic coincidence. I knew better. They had killed him to silence him. But they had not found the envelope. They had not found the evidence. I spent the next 3 days in a state of hypervigilance. I barely slept. I barely ate. I attended classes mechanically, taking notes I would never read, smiling at jokes I would never remember. Wangu noticed something was wrong. You look like a ghost, she said one morning. Are you okay? Just jet lag. Elite. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. She was too busy with her own ambitions, joining the student council, networking with professors, building her resume. Luong, on the other hand, watched me with quiet concern. One evening, she found me sitting alone in the stairwell, the envelope hidden under my jacket. You're in trouble, she said. It was not a question. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're scared. And you have every right to be. She sat down next to me. I saw the news about the professor. He was at the university. Wasn't he? The night he died. I didn't answer. Lin Wan, I don't know what you're involved in, but I know you're not a bad person. You helped me with my math homework. You shared your food with me when I ran out of money. You don't deserve to be hunted. I felt tears prickling at my eyes. I blinked them back. I can't tell you anything. It's not safe. I don't need you to tell me. I just need you to know that you're not alone. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small keychain. It was a brass compass, tarnished and old. My grandfather gave this to me when I left home. He said it would always point me in the right direction. I want you to have it. I stared at the compass. I can't take this. Yes, you can. You need it more than I do. She pressed it into my hand. Promise me you'll find a way out. I looked at her. Her round face, her earnest eyes, her trembling smile. I promise. I said I didn't know if I could keep that promise that night. I made a decision. I could not stay in the dormitory forever. The Shin's men would find me eventually. I needed to move. I needed to go somewhere they wouldn't expect. I remember the computer lab, the old desktops, the outdated software. It was the last place anyone would look for a fugitive. I packed my essentials, the envelope, the USB drives, the burner phone, the compass. I left everything else behind. I left a note for Luong telling her not to worry. I left a fake trail for Wang Su, making it look like I had taken a bus to Tangjin. Then I slipped out the window and disappeared into the night. The computer lab was dark and cold. The janitor had already finished his rounds. I used a lock-picking trick I had learned from a YouTube tutorial. Clumsy, but effective, and let myself in. I settled into a corner cubicle hidden from the windows. I plugged in my USB drive. I opened the files, and I worked. I spent the next 48 hours cross-referencing the shipping manifests with the bank statements. I traced the money through a maze of offshore accounts. I found names. I found dates. I found a pattern. The Shins had been smuggling something out of the country. Not drugs. Not weapons. Something else. Something that required special containers, special permits, special handling. I found a shipment from 3 months ago. A container labeled medical equipment that had been sent to a clinic in a small African nation. The clinic did not exist. The address was a warehouse. I opened a new browser window. I searched for the name of the shipping company. It was owned by a shell corporation. The shell corporation was owned by another shell corporation. And at the top of the chain, Hidden behind layers of legal fiction was a name I recognized. Xinqing. She was not just the daughter of a corrupt businessman. She was the architect. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You're getting close. Be careful. They know about the lab." I froze. I looked around the dark room. Was I being watched? I packed my things quickly. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy footsteps. Multiple people. I ducked under the desk, my heart pounding. The footsteps stopped outside the lab door. A key turned in the lock. The door swung open. Flashlight beams swept across the room. I held my breath. Checked the cubicles. A voice said, I heard them moving. I heard them opening cabinets, overturning chairs. Then I saw a shadow fall across my desk. A hand reached down and grabbed my arm. I screamed, but the hand was gentle. A familiar voice whispered, "It's me. Don't make a sound." I looked up. The senior advisor from the train station was crouching next to me, her finger pressed to her lips. "Come." "With me," she said. "No." She pulled me out from under the desk and led me to a service door at the back of the lab. We slipped through just as the men entered the front of the room. We ran down a narrow staircase through a boiler room and out into the cold night air. She didn't stop until we reached a parked car, a nondescript grey sedan, and pushed me into the passenger seat. She got in the driver's side and started the engine. "Who are you?" I gasped. "A friend," she said. "I've been watching you since you arrived. I was the one who sent you the photograph." My mouth fell open. "You?" I was Xinming's girlfriend. We were planning to run away together. He told me everything he knew before he died. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled on the steering wheel. "I've been waiting for someone brave enough to finish what he started. Why didn't you do it yourself?" "Because I'm a coward, and because I had to survive long enough to find someone who could." She looked at me. "You're that someone." Lin Wan. She drove through the dark streets of Beijing. The city lights blurred past the window. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't find us." "And then what?" She took a deep breath. "Then we take down the Shin family together." She took a deep breath. "Then we take down the Shin family together." The gray sedan hummed through the empty streets. I stared at Xiaomi's profile. The sharp jaw. The steady eyes that never left the road. She looked nothing like the quiet advisor. From the station, she looked like a soldier. "Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning." She turned left into a narrow alley, then pulled into a parking garage. The tires squealed on the concrete. She killed the engine and faced me. "Xinming discovered the truth 6 months ago," she began. "He was a junior analyst in the family shipping division. One night, he found an invoice that didn't match any cargo manifest. He dug deeper. What he found was a network. Xinqing was using the family's legitimate business to smuggle experimental bioweapons. Bioweapons. My throat tightened. Modified pathogens designed to target specific genetic markers. She was selling them to foreign buyers. The laboratory you were investigating. It was the production facility. Xinming copied files, took photographs. He planned to go to the authorities, but he was killed. Jaw's jaw clenched. They found out his car was forced off the highway. They made it look like an accident. But before he died, he sent me a message. A location. I went there. He'd hidden everything in a safety deposit box under a false name. And you've been waiting ever since. I sent you the photograph anonymously, because I saw you asking questions. I needed to know if you were one of them or one of us." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a key. "This opens the box. The evidence is complete. Financial records, buyer identities, lab logs. Enough to bring down the entire family." I took the key. It was cold and heavy in my palm. "Then why haven't you gone to the police?" I asked. "Because the Shin family owns half the police in the city. Shining brother-in-law is the deputy commissioner. Any report I file would be buried before lunch." She started the engine again. "But I know someone who can help. A journalist. He's been investigating the family for years. If we give him the evidence, he'll publish it internationally. The pressure will force an independent investigation." She drove out of the garage. The sky was starting to lighten. A pale gray dawn over Beijing. "Where is this journalist?" "He's hiding, too. Out in the suburbs. We need to get there before Shining's people find us. I gripped the key until the edges bit into my skin. They already know we're together. The men at the lab, they were looking for me. And you saved me. That means you're compromised now. Too. I know. S' voice was calm. But I've been running for 6 months. I'm tired of running. She pressed the accelerator. The sedan shot forward. We drove for 40 minutes, zigzagging through side streets and residential neighborhoods. Twice, Jay doubled back to check for tails. The city gave way to industrial zones, then farmland. Finally, she pulled onto a dirt road lined with dying poplar trees. A small farmhouse stood at the end, its windows dark. He's here, she said. Stay close to me. We got out. The morning air smelled of damp earth and diesel. Ju knocked on the door. 3 quick taps. A pause. Then 2 more. The door opened a crack. A man's face appeared, gaunt and tired. "Joe May," he said. "You're early. We have company, and we're being hunted." The man opened the door wider. He was in his 50s, with gray street hair, and the kind of weary eyes that had seen too many conspiracies. "Get inside. Quickly." We stepped into the farmhouse. It was sparsely furnished. A table, 2 chairs, a laptop, stacks of papers. The man locked the door behind us. "This is Lin Wan," Jia said. "She has the key." I held it up. "Shin Ming's evidence. You're the journalist. Wan Lely, former chief investigative reporter at the Beijing Times. Now I'm a ghost." He gestured to the laptop. "I've been building the case file for a year, but I'm missing the lab data. If you have it, we can break this open." "The bank opens at 9 o'clock, said. "We need to get the box before Shinking's people find out." One shook his head. "They already know. I intercepted a communication 20 minutes ago. Shinkingen has put a 10 million yuan bounty on you 2 alive if possible. But she's authorized lethal force." My stomach dropped. "Then we go now," said, before they have time to surround the bank. We moved one, grabbed a duffel bag with his laptop and files. We piled into his beat-up van and headed back toward the city. The morning traffic was thickening. Every car that pulled alongside us made my heart race. Jia sat in the passenger seat watching the mirrors. Wan Lei drove, with a practiced calm. "The bank is in Qiang District," he said. "Flagship branch. They have a safety deposit vault in the basement. We'll need a withdrawal slip and the key. That's it. And if they've been tipped off?" I asked. "Then we improvise." We reached the bank at 8:55. A line of customers already waited outside the glass doors. One lay parked around the corner. "I'll stay with the van. Keep the engine running. If you're not out in 15 minutes, I leave without you." May looked at me already. I nodded. My mouth was dry. We walked to the bank entrance. The security guard at us, but said nothing. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights. Joe May led me to the vault staircase. A bank officer met us at the bottom. "Can I help you?" "We're here to access a safe deposit box." Joe May showed the key and a withdrawal slip she prepared earlier. The officer examined them, then nodded. "Follow me." He unlocked the iron gate. The vault was a long room lined with numbered boxes. He led us to number 47, inserted a master key, and stepped back. "You have 10 minutes. Joe inserted her key. The lock clicked. She pulled out the long metal box and carried it to a small private booth. I followed. Inside, the box was full of manila folders and USB drives. Jia opened the first folder. Financial statements, transaction logs, photographs of laboratory equipment. She flipped through them with trembling hands. "This is it," she whispered. "Everything." We stuffed the contents into her bag. As we closed the empty box, my phone vibrated. I checked the screen. An unknown number asterisk, they're outside. 3 vehicles. "I'll create a distraction. Go out through the service entrance. Turn left at the end of the hall. Down the stairs. Through the kitchen. One will meet you at the loading dock. Zatem asterisk." I showed her. Her face went pale. "He's sacrificing himself." "No. Ikopt him. We have to go. That's what he wants." We ran. The service entrance was unguarded. We burst into a narrow hallway, down a flight of stairs, through a kitchen, where cook gaped at us. We slammed through a fire door into the loading dock. One Lay's van screeched to a stop in front of us. The side door slid open. Get in. We jumped in. The van roared away as gunshots rang out behind us. And then a louder explosion shook the street. One lay cursed. They've got explosives. They're not messing around. I looked back through the rear window. The bank's front entrance was obscured by smoke. A car was on fire. People were screaming. One Leia said, her voice breaking, "What did you do?" I drove a stolen garbage truck through their formation and jumped up before it hit a gas line. He managed a grim smile. Old journalist trick. Now hold on. We're going underground. He swerved into a parking garage, then down a ramp into what looked like an old subway tunnel. The van's headlights illuminated dark abandoned tracks. Where does this lead? I asked. A station that was closed after a fire in the 90s. No one uses it. We can lay low for a few hours, while I upload everything to secure servers. We drove in darkness for 10 minutes. The tunnel smelled of rust and rot. Finally, one lay stopped the van beside a concrete platform. This is as far as we go. Let's find a place to work. We clung out. The platform was littered with broken tiles and graffiti. May carried the evidence bag like it was her child. Winelay set up his laptop on a collapsed ticket counter. I'll need 2 hours to encrypt and distribute the files, he said. After that, no one can stop the story from going live. We sat in the dim light of the laptop screen. The silence was broken only by dripping water and the distant rumble of trains above us. I looked at Jay. What happens after this? If we survive, she said quietly, I'm going to find a quiet place by the sea, open a small bookstore, never look at a shipping manifest again. You deserve that. So do you. She reached out and squeezed my hand for the first time in days. I felt something like hope. Then the tunnel echoed with the sound of footsteps, many footsteps coming closer. One lay froze. They found us. The footsteps grew louder. Flashlight beams flickered at the far end of the tunnel. They must have tracked the van. Ja vispered. One closed his laptop. Ive uploaded 60%. Not enough. I need more time. Then buy it. I stood up. Give me the bag. I'll lead them away. No. She grabbed my arm. You'll be killed. They want the evidence more than they want me. If I have it, they'll follow. You two can finish the upload from a different spot. It's suicide. One. Lily said. It's the only way. I pulled the bag from grasp. You said you were a coward. Jayom. You're not. You've been braver than anyone I've ever met. Now, let me be brave for once. Her eyes glistened. Linwan. Go find a place to hide. I'll draw them as far as I can. I didn't wait for an answer. I turned and ran down the tracks in the opposite direction, the bag thumping against my back. She's there. A voice shouted after her. Flashlights converged on me. I sprinted, jumping over debris, my limbs burning. The tunnel branched ahead. I took the left fork, then another left, deeper into the dark. The footsteps were closer. I heard shouts, curses. A gunshot rang out. The bullet ricocheted off the wall beside me. I ducked into an alcove. My heart hammered. I pressed myself against the cold concrete. The pursuers passed me. I waited, counting to 10, then crocked back the way I came. I found a rusted maintenance ladder leading up to a manhole cover. I climbed, pushed the cover open, and emerged onto a street lined with abandoned warehouses. The morning sun blinded me. I blinked, orienting myself. I was on the edge of the city near the railway yards. I needed to find a way back to, but I had no phone, no map, no plan. Then I heard a car engine. A black sedan turned the corner and stopped in front of me. The door opened. Shinkingen stepped out. She was dressed in a tailored white suit, her hair perfectly coiffed as if she were heading to a board meeting. She smiled, a cold, predatory smile. Linwan. I was wondering when we'd finally meet. I clutched the bag. You're too late. The evidence is already being uploaded. Is it? She raised an eyebrow. You mean the files your journalist friend is transmitting from the old subway station? I've had a team jamming all signals in a 2-kilometer radius for the past hour. Nothing got through. My blood ran cold. Lay. I choked. He's dead. So is your friend. Shinching's smile widened. I had them shot while you were playing hide and seek in the tunnels. You were the decoy. Remember, you led my men away. Very clever, but also very stupid. Tears burned my eyes. I wanted to scream. "Give me the bag," she said, "and I'll let you live. I'll even give you a job. You're resourceful. I could use someone like you. I'd rather die. That can be arranged." She snapped her fingers. 2 men emerged from the sedan, guns drawn. I looked at the bag in my arms. The evidence that had cost so many lives. The proof that Xinqing was a monster. And I realized if the upload was blocked, the physical copies were all that remained. I couldn't let her have them. I turned and ran. "Shoot her!" Xinqing screamed. Bullets whizzed past me. I zigzagged, dove behind a dumpster. A bullet grazed my shoulder. A sharp burn. I gritted my teeth. I had to get to the railway yards. A train was moving. A freight train picking up speed. If I could jump onto it, I might escape, but the bag was too heavy. I was slowing down. I made a choice. I opened the bag, grabbed a handful of the most damning files. The lab logs, with shining signature. The photos of bioweapons. The transfer records. And shoved them into my jacket. The rest, I scattered into the wind. Papers flew everywhere, tumbling across the tracks. "Stop her! Get those papers!" Men scrambled to catch them. But the wind was strong. Documents fluttered over the train tracks into the path of the oncoming locomotive. The train's horn blared. I ran alongside the moving cars. Desperation gave me strength. I grabbed a ladder on the side of a boxcar, pulled myself up, and clung to it as the train accelerated below. I saw Xinqing's enraged face shrink into the distance. Her men were still chasing papers. I had escaped for now. But I was alone. Zhao was dead. Lei was dead. The evidence was scattered or jammed. I had a handful of documents and a burning need for justice. Before the college entrance exam, the class beauty poured sulfuric acid into everyone's water cups. After I learned what had happened, I told our homeroom teacher. He called the police, and everyone was unharmed. Even went on to get into top universities. But the class beauty was taken away by the police because of it. Missed the college entrance exam and slit her wrists in suicide before she died. The class beauty posted a voice message in the class chat, sobbing between hiccups. So baby just wanted to tease you all for fun. But you did this to me and broke this baby's heart after the class beauty died. The whole class blamed me for it. They said the class beauty was just a baby and she was only joking around with them. So why did I have to hurt her? My boyfriend took the lead in having me dragged away, watching the other students mix sulfuric acid into the water and force it down my throat. I was burned through my entire body and died in agony. When I opened my eyes, I was back to the day the class beauty secretly poured sulfuric acid into everyone's water cups. 1. After secretly spiking each of our water cups, the class beauty tiptoed back to her seat, her white canvas shoes making almost no sound on the floor. I lay with my head on the desk, pretending to doze, and could see everything clearly through the gap in my folded arms. She was clutching that little brown glass bottle in her hand, her movements light and quick, like she was playing a game when she got to Joining's desk. She even paused for 2 extra seconds, probably hesitating over whether to pour in a little more. In the end, she twisted the cap back on, stuffed the bottle into her uniform pocket, and trotted back to her own seat in tiny, quick steps. I closed my eyes. My heart was beating a little fast, but not from fear. It was the kind of exhilaration that surged through a hunter's blood, lurking in the dark. They finally saw the full layout of the trap. In my last life, I was far too stupid. The moment I saw her add something to the water, my first instinct was to run and tell the homeroom teacher. The homeroom teacher called the police, and when they arrived, all the class's water cups were sent for testing. It really was sulfuric acid, and the concentration was quite high. Everyone was fine. When Swanee was taken away, she was crying buckets of tears. 2 police officers held her by the arms, one on each side. She was so limp she seemed boneless, and as they dragged her out, she kept looking back and shouting, "Baby just wanted to play a little joke on you guys. Baby didn't mean it. Why are you trying to hurt baby?" The whole class had red-rimmed eyes. Joking. She stood on his seat, his fists clenched so hard they cracked, staring daggers in my direction. The hatred surging in those eyes lipped as if it would devour me whole. He was my boyfriend from freshman year to senior year. 3 years. He was the one who pursued me. He said, "Young Zin, You're the most special girl I've ever met. He said, Jinhin, I'll love only you for the rest of my life. I believed him. Only later did I realize that a person can tell you I'll love you for a lifetime while in their heart they place someone else on a pedestal. Sue Annie was that goddess. Her voice message was posted in the class group chat on the third day after she was taken into custody. Her voice was soft and sugary, crying so hard she could barely catch her breath. Every few sobs, a tiny hiccup slipped out. She said, So baby was just trying to tease you guys for fun. Hick, and you treat baby like this. Heck, you've broken baby's heart. I listened to that voice message twice. Not because I felt sorry for her, but because it was absurd. An 18-year-old poured sulfuric acid into dozens of people's water cups and said she was just trying to tease you guys for fun. Then, after being exposed and held legally accountable, she wanted to blame others for breaking her heart. Even more absurd was that everyone accepted this logic. The day the news came that Sue Annie had slit her wrists, the class group chat exploded. The screen was flooded with Annie baby. And how could this happen? With sobs and wails piled together like a grand memorial service. Then all at once, the blame turned toward me. It's all young Jin's fault. If she hadn't snitched, Annie wouldn't have been taken away. Annie already said it was just a joke. Why does she have to keep making such a big deal out of it? Exactly. It was supposed to be a bit of fun, and she had to blow it out of proportion. And now look, someone's dead. Is she satisfied now? 2. Not a single person said she was wrong for pouring sulfuric acid into the cup. Not one. Sue Annie used her own death to stage a flawless moral ambush. She cast herself as a victim and turned me into the vicious woman who killed an innocent little angel. When she came to the classroom to find me, his expression was very calm. 2. Calm for him. He said, Jansen, come out with me for a moment. I went out with him at the corner of the hallway. 3 other classmates were waiting there. I knew them. They were eloping guys and all hopelessly devoted to Sue Annie when they tied me up. I didn't struggle much. It wasn't that I'd given up. It was just that I had no time to react. The rough rope dug into the skin of my wrists, and a towel was stuffed into my mouth as I was dragged into the chemistry lab. The back door was open, and there was no one in the hallway. They pressed my head over the sink in the lab bench, and Joping unscrewed a bottle of water. Aiming it at my mouth, I caught a sharp, pungent smell. It wasn't water. It was sulfuric acid. Aren't you the one who loves tattling? So Pinky looked down at me. His expression, so gentle it was almost merciful. Go on. Try it yourself and see whether it really kills people. If you don't die, then Annie really was just joking. If you do die, he tilted his head slightly, as if thinking it over carefully. Then go keep her company. The moment the acid was poured into my mouth, I tasted something more painful than death itself. It wasn't physical pain. It was the absurd feeling of being betrayed by the whole world. You saved everyone, and everyone turned around and killed you, all while believing they were avenging justice from beginning to end. I never cried. When the searing pain of my burning organs and viscera spread through me, there was only one thought left in my mind. If I could do it all over again, if heaven gave me a chance to start over, I would never call the police again. The moment I opened my eyes, I saw the sunlight, the early summer sun, pale yet bright, slanted into the window and fell across the mottled paint on the desk. The air smelled of chalk dust and sweat. The fan overhead creaked as it turned so slowly it seemed like an old man too tired to move. There were footsteps in the hallway, people laughing and others shouting. Good luck on the college entrance exam. Alive. I was actually alive. My mind went blank for a moment. Then memories came crashing in all at once. Sue Annie's voice message. The screen full of abuse in the class group chat. Choping's face gentle in a way that was almost cruel, and the searing pain of sulfuric acid pouring down my throat. I took a deep breath and caught the lingering scent of laundry detergent in the air. It was lavender scented, bought for through on a bag from the little convenience store by the school gate in our senior year, and it lasted an entire semester. The seats in the classroom were still the same. I sat in the 3rd row by the window. Swanee was in the center of the 1st row and was in the 2nd row by the aisle. Water cups were neatly lined up at each desk corner. Clear plastic cups printed with different patterns. I lay sprawled across the desk, my face buried in my arms, pretending to still be asleep. 3. The door was pushed open. Students drifted into the classroom in ones and twos, carrying breakfast and yawning. Some were discussing the conic section problem they'd worked on last night, while others were complaining that the last big question on the math paper was way too hard. Tomorrow was the college entrance exam, so today's schedule was free study. The classroom was quieter than usual, but beneath that quiet simmered to restlessness, like water just about to boil. I heard Sue Annie's footsteps pause. She sat in her seat for 3 seconds, then stood up again. Smack! The sound of a hand slapping the tabletop wasn't loud, but it was enough to make everyone look up. Sue Annie stood in the center of the front row, both hands planted on the desk, leaning forward slightly, her ponytail swinging in a pretty arc. She had a round face, big eyes, naturally pink lips, and 2 dimples whenever she smiled. Today she was wearing a school uniform skirt with a strawberry hair clip pinned at her collar, looking every bit like a sweet girl straight out of a manga. Tomorrow's the college entrance exam already. Her voice was sweet and soft, the tail end of her words rising and stretching out long as if she were being coquettish. Baby wants to have a drink with everyone. Can we use water instead of alcohol? A few classmates laughed. She used this cutesy tone every day, and the whole class had long since gotten used to it. That was just Sue Annie's personality. Innocent and lively, sweetly spoiled and adorable. Everyone treated her like a baby, and she called herself one. 2. No one thought there was anything wrong with it. Even if someone occasionally frowned, they'd be brushed off with a single line from the others. She's just a kid, an 18-year-old kid. Zoping was the first to stand up. He picked up the water glass on the table and raised it towards Sue Annie, a gentle smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The same one I had been obsessed with in my past life. That smile once made me think he was the warmest guy in the world. Now it just makes me sick. Any suggestion is a good one. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, just like every time he stood up to speak for her. Tomorrow we'll all be going our separate ways. So, let's treat this glass of water as a blessing for today. Come on, everyone, raise your glasses. As he said that, his gaze slid past me without stopping. Sparse sounds of chairs scraping and cups being picked up broke out in the classroom. Some people smiled as they lifted their glasses. Others shouted, "Good luck!" on the college entrance exam. A fake sense of liveless filled the air like a Last Supper. I slowly straightened up from the desk. The cup was right next to my right hand, a clear plastic cup with a crooked little rabbit printed on the side. It was filled with warm water I'd poured in this morning, and by now it should have gone completely cold. I didn't know whether anything had been added to it. I saw Sue Annie when she was pouring the water, but I wasn't sure whether she'd tampered with my cup. In my last life, the test results showed that everyone in the class had sulfuric acid except her and Zhao Pinky. This life, I'd gotten the gods eye view early enough, but the details were still the same. Just because she was crouched by the podium pouring water into the mineral water bottle didn't mean she hadn't already put something into the cups beforehand. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that this time I wouldn't call the police. This time I'd make sure every last drop of this water went exactly where it was supposed to. Jinhin for Xiaoping's voice came from over there. He had already walked over to my desk with a cup of water in hand, wearing just the right amount of concern on his face. He really was good-looking. Clear, handsome features and a tall, slender build. The school uniform looked even more sharp and upright on him than on anyone else with that face and that expression. Anyone who saw him would think he was worried about his girlfriend. "Why aren't you saying anything? Your face is so red. Are you running a fever?" He reached out trying to feel my forehead. I turned my head and dodged him. His hand froze in midair. He paused for a moment, then smiled. That smile was faint and light, full of the indulgence of someone thinking, "My girlfriend is just being a little sulky." He pulled his hand back, not taking it seriously, then looked down at my cup and over towards Sue Annie's side. "Annie specially brought drinks today," he said in the kind of tone you'd use to play a child who wasn't being very obedient. "She said it was supposed to be a surprise for everyone, so don't be a downer." Surprise. I almost laughed out loud. Yeah, it was quite a surprise. Acid diluted with water. So much of a surprise it burns right through your esophagus. So Annie was already standing on the platform, both hands wrapped around that pink Hello Kitty tumbler, the rim pressed to her chin, her eyes sparkling as she looked at the whole class. Behind her was the blackboard where the 4 big characters "Good luck on the college entrance exam" were written in colorful chalk. She had painstakingly drawn each stroke during last night's self-study session. Then even took a photo and posted it on Moments with the caption, "Baby wishes everyone makes it to the other side. Everyone ready?" She tilted her head, her ponytail sliding from her right shoulder to her left. "Baby's going first to toast everyone." She lifted her neck and actually took a sip. A drop of water from the Hello Kitty tumbler spilled from the corner of her mouth and ran down her chin. She stuck out the tip of her tongue to lick it away. A few boys saw that move, and someone let out a whistle. Xiaoping smiled, too, and there was something in that smile I couldn't quite put into words. In my previous life, I thought it was gentleness. Now I understand it was indulgence. Indulgence that didn't care about right or wrong and didn't think about the consequences. "Come on," he said, lifting his cup a little higher and turning to face the whole class like a host. "I'd like to propose that we raise our glasses together and wish everyone good luck on the college entrance exam and a bright future ahead. And let's also wish Annie." He paused, his gaze settling on the pink figure at the podium. His voice suddenly softened, "that she'll always be our little princess." The whole class applauded. Some people laughed. Some shouted, "Here's to Annie staying 18 forever." And others started teasing, "Janky, do you like Annie or what?" Zhao Pingqi didn't deny it. He just smiled and shook his head, but there was no real denial in the gesture. It almost felt like he was saying, "You've seen right through me." I picked up my cup. The cup was cold against my palm. The surface of the water rippled, slightly, reflecting the fan overhead. I looked down at that cup of water as if I were staring at a crossroads in fate. Drink it or don't. Call the police or don't. Save her or don't. I chose not to save her, but I wouldn't let this cup of water go to waste. "I'll drink," I said. His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough for Zhou Pingqi to hear. He glanced at me, looking somewhat surprised. He probably expected me to refuse, to frown, to say, "Come on, quit messing around," and ruin the mood for everyone. That was the kind of reaction Yang Jin was supposed to have, but I wasn't Yang Jin anymore. Or rather, I knew better than Yang Jing'an how to play along with these people. 5. I lifted my glass and tilted it towards Su Annie, even letting a smile play at my lips. It wasn't a sincere smile, just a fake one that said, "See, I'm being such a good sport," but in a setting like this, no one bothered to tell real from fake. Swanee clearly loved that. Her eyes curved into 2 crescent moons. She made a heart at me with her fingers and said in a soft, sugary voice, "Zhenhin is the best. Baby loves you." Zhaoing looked at me too. Something more in his gaze. Maybe surprise, maybe satisfaction, or maybe a kind of confirmation. Confirmation that he'd successfully tamed me. He reached over to put an arm around my shoulder, then bent down and said in my ear, "That's more like it." A warm breath brushed my ear, raising goosebumps all over my body. It wasn't desire. It was pure physical disgust. But I didn't pull away. In fact, I leaned slightly closer to him. I wanted everyone to think that Yang Jin was still the same Yang Jin, the one hopelessly madly in love with Zhou Pingqi last life. When they killed me, they felt no guilt at all because they thought I had it coming. I saved everyone, and everyone thought I was meddling because in their eyes everything Swanee did was right and exposing Su Annie was wrong. So this time I won't expose her. I'll make them lift that cup of water with their own hands and drink it themselves. 3, 2, 1, Jopi lifted the cup as if presiding over a ceremony. The whole class tilted their heads back at once, just as my lips were about to touch the surface of the water. "What are you all doing?" A voice came from the doorway. Not loud, but carrying the unmistakable authority of a homeroom teacher like a bucket of cold water dumped into a boiling pot. Mr. Lee stood at the classroom door holding a thermos, frowning as he swept his gaze over the entire class. He was wearing a faded polo shirt, his hair a mess, and behind his glasses were bloodshot eyes from years of staying up late grading papers. "It's free study time. What on earth are you doing?" His tone wasn't harsh, but it wasn't exactly gentle either. It had that vibe of "I'm your homeroom teacher. I've seen it all and don't think you can fool me." Su Annie reacted faster than anyone else. She hid the Hello Kitty water cup behind her back, turned to face Mr. Lee, and flashed a smile so sweet it could give anyone a toothache. "Mr. Lee, Tomorrow's our college entrance exam already, and baby wants to have a toast with everyone. Water instead of wine to relax a little. When she said the word, baby, her voice turned soft as cotton candy, drawing out the last syllable. She swayed slightly, and her ponytail swung back and forth with her. That kind of cute pleading act didn't work on most teachers, but it worked on Mr. Lee. Although he was a homeroom teacher, he was rather soft-hearted. Over the past 3 years, he had fallen for Sue Annie's baby act more than once. Late to class. No didaction. Forgot your homework. Just make it up later. Talking during class. He'd turn a blind eye. As soon as Sue Annie started pouting, Mr. Lee would back down 3 inches. Sure enough, Mr. Lee's expression softened a little. He glanced at the water cups in everyone's hands, then at the big words, "Good luck," on the gallow written on the blackboard, and the corners of his mouth even lifted slightly. "It's fine to relax," he said, his tone already shifting from homeroom teacher doing his spot check to a caring elder. "But don't get too worked up. You've still got an exam tomorrow. Finish your water, then get back to studying properly. No need to make a ritual out of it." 6. After saying that, he left with his thermos in hand. The footsteps in the hallway gradually faded into the distance. The classroom fell quiet for 2 seconds. Then Sue Annie turned around, stuck out her tent at the whole class, placed her hands together, and placed them beside her face, making us sorry for the interruption. But let's keep going expression. Her little gesture flowed so naturally, like a sketch actor who'd rehearsed it 100 times. "All right." She clapped her hands, her voice returning to that sweet, soft, sticky tone. "Since Teacher Lee says we can relax a bit, the baby still hasn't finished what she was saying." She picked up her Hello Kitty tumbler again, cleared her throat, and her eyes curved into 2 crescents. "One last thing the baby wants to say." She took a deep breath, her expression suddenly turning very serious in a way that was almost deliberately earnest. "Thank you all for taking care of me these past 3 years. The baby really likes everyone. Tomorrow's the GAO. Let's all work hard together and make it across the finish line." Cheers. Cheers. Someone echoed her, and then more voices joined, and Pinky picked up his glass of water again and smiled at me. The smile was so gentle, it was almost absurd, as if to say, "See, what a nice atmosphere. You almost ruined it just now. But good thing I stopped you." He knew nothing. He had no idea the water in his hand had been tampered with. He held up that spiked glass of water and grinned like an idiot. He thought he was the chosen knight, never realizing that in this game of chess, he was nothing more than a pawn that could be sacrificed at any moment. "Shinjin." Seeing that I still hadn't moved, Joe Pinky called out again. I came back to myself and looked at him. He stood before me, backlit, his features rimmed with gold by the sunlight. To be honest, he really was handsome with a clean boyish look. Between his brows and eyes in my previous life for that face and those sweet words, I turned myself into a complete fool. "Not this time coming," I said. I lifted the water glass to my lips, the rim touching my lower lip, but I clenched my teeth shut and didn't let a single drop get into my mouth. I tipped my head back slightly, pretending to drink, my Adam's apple bobbing once as I made a swallowing sound. No one noticed that I hadn't actually drunk any of it. Everyone's attention was on Sue Annie. She stood by the podium holding her water glass, with both hands and taking tiny sips, pausing after each one to smile at someone like a princess basking in everyone's attention. I watched Lin Kiki, who was sitting in the second row, tip her head back and down the water in one go. Afterward, she wiped her mouth with her sleeve and gave Sue Annie a thumbs up. "Annie, the water tastes a little sour. Did you add lemon juice?" Sue Annie blinked, her smile turning even sweeter. "Yep, it's a special recipe, baby, mixed up just for everyone." As she said it, her expression didn't change one bit. I held my glass and watched as the people in the classroom drank the water one after another. Some smacked their lips, some said, "Yeah, it is a little sour," and others laughed. Anything Annie mixes tastes good. No one was suspicious. No one thought anything was off in their minds. Sue Annie was that innocent little baby, so there was no way she could hurt anyone, even if someone were holding a knife to your throat, as long as she had a harmless-looking face and spoke with a quivery babish voice. You wouldn't think she was out to get you. That was Sue Annie's weapon. Xiaoping also tipped his head back and finished his drink. He drank quickly, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down a few times before the glass was empty. Afterward, he even lifted the empty cup towards Sue Annie. The corners of his mouth curved in that devoted dog-like smile. Tasty, he said. 7. Tasty sulfuric acid diluted with water. Tasty. I nearly couldn't hold back a laugh. He said, down the cup and turned to me. You didn't drink yours. He noticed me. I set down the cup, which still had more than half a cup of water left in it. I smiled at him. I can't bear to drink it. It's the last glass of water before the college entrance exam. I want to savor it slowly. The line was so cheesy. I wanted to throw up myself. But after Ping-Chi heard it, a soft warmth rose in his eyes. He reached out and ruffled my hair, his tone indulgent like he was coaxing a little kitten. You silly thing. What's so special about a glass of water? Finish it and I'll pour you another. Okay, I said, but I didn't drink it. That half-full cup lay quietly there reflecting the shadow of the ceiling fan as it turned round and round. Sue Annie's cup was already empty. She turned the Hello Kitty cup upside down and shook it, then flashed the whole class a victory sign. Baby's finished hers. What about you guys? Has anyone not finished yet? Finished. Downed it. Annie's drink is too good. Can I have another? Sue Annie covered her mouth and laughed. No, this is a special blend. There's only 1 cup per person. A one-of-a-kind baby special. One of a kind. It really was one of a kind. Sulfuric acid diluted with water. There wasn't a second person in the whole world who could smile while handing out something like that to the whole class. Her gaze swept across the classroom before finally settling on my cup. That half cup of water was far too noticeable in a sea of empty cups. It stood there awkwardly like an unfinished period. Xinhin Swanee tilted her head at me, her tone laced with a petulant little complaint. Why haven't you finished yours? I especially mixed it for everyone. Do you not like it? She put extra emphasis on the words do not like, dragging the ending down in pitch, coupled with those eyes instantly brimming with mist. She looked every bit like a rounded little baby who'd been snubbed. The whole class's eyes snapped onto me at once. Someone started whispering, What's wrong with young Xanhin? Annie went out of her way to make her a drink, and she won't even take a sip. Yeah. What's with the holier than the act? Look at Joping's girlfriend. She's always like this. Whatever Annie does, she won't cooperate. Joping was looking at me, too. There was no annoyance on his face, but beneath that gentleness was a faint, subtle pressure, like an invisible hand resting on my shoulder. Xin, he said gently, so gently. It didn't even sound like he was urging me. This is Annie's kindness. Just drink it. Tomorrow's the college entrance exam. Don't spoil the mood for everyone. Don't spoil the mood for everyone. In my last life, he said the same thing when Swanee suggested that everyone drink the water together. When everyone raised their cups, when I was hesitating over whether to tell the truth. He said, Don't ruin the moment. And I swallowed every bit of unease back down. This time I wasn't swallowing it, but I wasn't going to flip the table right now either. I picked up my glass and smiled at Sue Annie. Annie, of course. I'll drink your special blend, but this water is too special. I want to save it until after the exam tomorrow. Think of it as leaving myself a little keepsake. After I finish the last test, I'll drink this blessing and wrap things up on a perfect note. What do you say? Sue Annie's expression froze for a split second. It was only a fraction of a second. Then she beamed again, cupping her face with both hands and putting on an expression so moved she looked like she was about to cry. Xinhin, you're so romantic. Baby never even thought of that. Okay. Let's keep this glass of water until after tomorrow's exam, and then baby will drink it with you. She turned to face the whole class and clapped her hands. You all heard that, right? Jinxon is going to keep this glass of baby's special blend until after tomorrow's exam before drinking it. This is an exclusive tradition of our class 3. No one is allowed to sneak a sip. 8. Some people laughed. Some said, Yang really knows how to create a sense of occasion. And others chimed in. Then I'll keep 1. 2. No one thought anything was off. No one asked what exactly had been added to that glass of water because to them it was just any baby's special drink. Tart like lemonade with Sue Annie's signature sweetness and innocence. No one knew it was sulfuric acid except me with Sue Annie. When her gaze slid past my face, that look of hatred surfaced again, darker and fiercer than before, like a jar of aged poison. She saw that I hadn't drunk it. She saw that I had left the glass of water untouched. She saw me smile and diffuse her urging. She saw me put on a flawless performance in front of everyone, pretending to cherish Annie's kindness. She understood everything. She knew it. I knew there was something in the water. But she didn't know how I knew. She didn't know I had seen her pour the water. She didn't know I knew it was sulfuric acid. She didn't know I might understand this glass of water better than she did, because in my past life. I drank it. Suddenly, hurried footsteps sounded in the hallway. Not one person's footsteps, but several sets at once. A jumble of sounds overlapping. The clack of dress, shoes striking the floor. The crackle of a walkie-talkie. And the faint rustle of security uniforms rubbing together. The door was pushed open, and came Vice Principal Lang, Director Chin from the Academic Affairs Office, and 2 security guards in uniform. Bringing up the rear was Teacher Lee, whose thermos cup was gone, replaced by a deathly pale face. No one moved. Vice Principal Wang raised one hand. His voice wasn't loud, but the sheer authority in it instantly silenced the entire classroom. His hand was trembling slightly, not from fear but from anger. Everyone put down the cups in your hands. The air in the classroom seemed to freeze. Annie stood by the podium, still holding the Hello Kitty water bottle against her chest. Her expression shifted from sweet to confused, then from confused to a carefully calculated blankness. She tilted her head slightly, lips parted just a little, looking like a deer caught in headlights, harmless, innocent, and completely unaware of what had happened. Principal Wang. Her voice was small and thin, with just the right amount of tremble. What happened? Vice Principal Wang didn't look at her. He turned and nodded to the security guard behind him. The security guard walked into the classroom and went straight to the case of bottled water beside the podium. He crouched down, pulled out the bottle Sue Annie had tampered with, unscrewed the cap, brought it close to his nose and sniffed it, then took a test strip from his pocket and dipped it into the bottle opening. The test strip changed color. The security guard stood up and walked over to Vice Principal Wang, saying a few words in a low voice. His voice was barely audible, but the classroom was so quiet that those 2 words seemed to stab into everyone's ears like needles. Sulfuric acid. The classroom exploded. Screams, chairs crashing to the floor, and the sound of cups shattering all blurred together like a pot of boiling porridge. Some people clapped a hand over their mouths and gagged. Some spat frantically. Some slumped in their chairs as white as sheets, and some stood up only to sink back down again. Sulfuric acid. Who put sulfuric acid in it? What did we just drink? I drank it. I drank that glass of water. Lemon juice. She said it was lemon juice. I took 2 sips. 9. Link's voice was the loudest, shrill as nails scraping across glass. Her face had gone paper white. Her lips were trembling, and both hands were gripping the edge of the desk, so hard her knuckles turned white. She jerked her head towards Swanee, her eyes wide with shock. Swanee was still standing by the podium. Her expression flickered for a split second. That moment was so brief that no one else could have caught it. But I did. The dazed look on her face was like a thin layer of ice with frantic calculations turning beneath it, calculating how to slip away, how to explain herself, and how to shift the blame. Her eyes darted left, then right, then left again like a fox cornered against a wall, searching for an escape route, and then she found one. Her eyes turned red. It wasn't the kind of all-out breakdown she'd had in her past life, sobbing her heart out. This was a more advanced kind of crying. Tears welling up in her eyes, threatening to fall, but not quite doing so. The corners of her eyes reined, the tip of her nose red as well, her whole face exuding a fragile, almost heartbreakingly beautiful delicacy. She didn't say a word, just looked at everyone with that expression, her lips trembling slightly like a round little animal. Xiaoping was the first to react the moment he heard the words sulfuric acid. His face went deathly pale, not because he was scared. At least he didn't think it was fear. His body reacted before his mind did. His stomach lurched. His throat felt like it had been clamped shut by something, and he started retching. The moment he bent over, he braced himself on the table, his fingertips turning white. He stared at his empty cup, his pupils trembling violently. He drank it. He drank every last drop. Sue Annie didn't spare him. That realization stabbed into his mind like a needle. He suddenly looked up at Swanee, and in his eyes was something I had never seen on his face before. Not anger, not accusation, but a kind of blank childlike confusion. Why? He must have been thinking. Why didn't she let me off? I used to wonder about that in my last life. Too. Later, I figured it out. Sue Annie wasn't some innocent little baby. She was a polished, self-interested opportunist. Her kindness to joining wasn't because she liked him, but because he was useful. He could take the hit for her, speak up for her, and be the first to stand out when she was being questioned. But once he was no longer useful, or when her plan needed more people's silence to cover it up, he could be sacrificed. It was that simple. Xiaoping's retching grew louder and louder. His whole body curled like a bow. His forehead pressed against the edge of the table, a sour liquid rose in his stomach, mixed with the taste of that glass of lemon juice. Tears of physiological distress welled up at the corners of his eyes, and no one knew whether they were from stomach pain or from something else. Pingqi Luniki called out to him. "Are you okay?" Pingqi waved a hand but couldn't say a word. He still didn't know this was only the beginning. Diluted sulfuric acid wouldn't burn through your esophagus right away, but that searing sensation would spread little by little, crawling down from your throat like a snake slowly coiling around your insides. I'd experienced that feeling in my past life. It wasn't intense, but it was relentless, like a red-hot wire, left pressed against your throat. Every breath you exhaled scorching hot. He would experience that feeling every second, every breath. "Joping. You drank it?" Someone asked in shock. "Aren't you Annie's best friend? How could she even make you?" 10. The question trailed off, but everyone understood. Jopinji straightened up and wiped the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand. His expression complicated. Anger, shock, betrayal, and a faint trace of something he was desperately trying to suppress. Doubt. He was doubting Sue Annie, but the moment that thought surfaced, he crushed it himself because he couldn't doubt her. The moment he did, everything he had stood by would collapse. His 3 years of favoritism, every time he'd spoken up for her, every time he put Swanee first in front of his girlfriend. If Sue Annie really wanted to hurt him, then he was nothing but a complete joke. So he couldn't accept that as the truth. He would find another explanation, he would tell himself. That Sue Annie didn't mean it, that she had simply made a mistake, or that the bottle really had been given to her by her mother and she knew nothing about it. He needed a lie to keep his world from collapsing. And the thing he was best at was making up lies for Swanee. Sure enough, Jopini took a deep breath, turned to face Vice Principal Lying, and said in a hoarse but resolute voice, "Principal Lying, there must be some misunderstanding here. And he isn't that kind of person." There it was again. He had said it in his last life, and he was saying it again. In this one, the difference was last time he said it. His cup was clean. This time, his throat was being scorched bit by sulfuric acid, and he could still say something like, "Annie isn't that kind of person." I almost wanted to applaud him. I suppose that's the power of love. Vice Principal 1 glanced at him, and there was something unreadable in that look. Probably pity. Pity for a young man who had been blinded and still had no idea whether there was any malice or not isn't something you can determine by words alone. Vice Principal Wang said, turning to the class, "Everyone keep the water in your cups. Special testing staff will come later to collect samples. Don't panic for now. The concentration isn't high, and anyone who only drink a little won't be in any immediate danger. But you still need to go to the hospital for a checkup." Hospital checkup. It was the same in my previous life. The whole class was taken to the hospital for gastric lavage and endoscopy and blood tests. After a whole day of chaos, the final result was that everyone was basically fine except that I ended up with a scar on my hand from the sulfuric acid burn. This time around, Joey was going to wonder whether when he's lying on the endoscopy table with a tube shoved down his throat, he'll still think Swanee is an innocent little baby. Vice Principal W pulled out his phone and started making calls. From what I could hear, he was contacting the hospital and the police. Director Chin was keeping order, telling everyone to return to their seats and not move around. 2 security guards stood at the door, watching everything in the classroom with grim expressions. Suani was taken away by Teacher Lee. As she walked out of the classroom, she looked back once. Her gaze swept over everyone. Lin Kiki, Zhaoyingi, me, and finally settled on me. Her expression changed. No longer the pitiful victim. No longer the innocent little baby. In those eyes turned something I had seen countless times before. Hatred, calculation, and a trace of emotion I had never seen in my previous life. Jealousy. She was jealous of me. Well, that's a surprise. 11 in my last life. I only knew she hated me for snitching on her. But I never once thought it was because she was jealous. After all, she was the one everyone had wrapped up in cotton wool. She had joining favoritism, the whole class's adoration, a face everyone loved at first sight, and the unlimited immunity that came with her baby persona. She had everything. What could she possibly be jealous of me for? But in this life, she saw something different in my eyes. Not fear, not guilt, not flattery. It was a kind of contempt she had never seen on my face before. That contempt terrified her because it meant that in my eyes she was no longer the baby who needed to be cherished and cuddled. She was just a ridiculous clown. After Sue Annie was taken away, the atmosphere in the classroom became even more unsettling. Some people were crying, some were calling their parents, some were desperately chugging water to dilute the poison in their stomachs, and some sat slumped over their desks without moving, their faces buried in their arms. Leaky bent over the sink and threw up 3 times. By the end, it was nothing but dry heaving, even while coming up all while cursing between retches. You nasty __ Sue Annie. What the hell did you put in this cup? Ugh. She was the loudest one cursing. But half an hour ago, she was one of Sue Annie's most loyal sycophants. Before Sue Annie was taken away, she was still saying he didn't mean it. And she's just a kid who doesn't know any better. People can change sides faster than flipping a page. Not because she'd had a moral awakening, but because that cup of water had gone down her own throat when the blade cut someone else. Anyone can be a saint. Only when it cuts you do you know what pain is. Japui sat in his seat, one hand pressed to his stomach, the other gripping an empty cup, his knuckles bone white. His face was as pale as paper, and a fine sweat had formed on his forehead. His expression was calm, but beneath that calm was too much being held down like a volcano ready to erupt at any moment. Every so often, he glanced at me out of the corner of his eye. He was waiting for me to say something, waiting for the young Jean who loved him madly in his imagination to rush over. Hold him. Ask if he was in pain. Say, I'll take you to the hospital. Say, it's okay. I'm here. I used to do exactly that back then. Even the slightest frown from him would break my heart for ages. But now, I was just sitting in my seat, holding that half glass of water, quietly looking out the window. The sunlight was bright. The sky was blue. Someone was running on the track in the distance. And everything was peaceful. Jean. He finally spoke. I turned my head to look at him. His lips were a little dry, and there was something in his eyes. I couldn't quite make out. It wasn't anger and it wasn't accusation. It was more like a cautious test. He had probably already sensed that something was off. His girlfriend was indifferent while he was being burned by acid. And that was wrong. But he still hadn't figured out exactly what was wrong. Because in his mind, young Jean loved him so deeply, she would never not care about him. Are you okay? He asked. Even now, he was still asking whether I was okay. I almost laughed. I'm fine. I said 12. He didn't drink from my cup. He was drinking from his own glass. This was fate's dark joke. In his past life, Sue Annie let him off. In this one, she didn't. And the reason he wasn't spared had nothing to do with me. It was simply because Sue Annie had become even more ruthless. But he wouldn't see it that way. He was already starting to hate me. I could see the seed of that hatred in his eyes. Tiny, delicate, like a blade of grass just breaking through spring soil. Still unnoticed by anyone. But it would grow, spread, and eventually crawl over his entire heart. Because people always need someone to hate. Hating Sue Annie was too painful because hating her meant admitting you were a joke. Hating the classmates who joined and cursed her was too troublesome because there were too many of them. Hating yourself was too cruel because you were the one who deserved it most. So hate me. Hating Yang Zin was the easiest, safest, and least psychologically burdensome choice because I was his girlfriend. Because I was supposed to shield him from every misfortune. And because I failed to do that, it was all my fault. The script from my past life wouldn't change even a single word in this one. Sirens sounded in the hallway, growing louder as they drew nearer. One ambulance. Two. Three. Like a long zipper tearing open the morning in the small county town. Teacher Lee, the homeroom teacher, hurried into the classroom, his face even paler than before. His lips trembled twice, and his voice sounded unsteady. Everyone, pack up and come with me. There are ambulances at the school gate. We'll go to the hospital in groups for checks. Someone asked. Teacher Lee, will we die? Teacher Lee's expression froze for a moment. Then he forced out a smile uglier than crying. No. The test results show the concentration is very low and there's no risk to life. But you still need to go to the hospital for a thorough examination to make sure everything is safe. They wouldn't die. No one died in my last life either. But someone did take their own life in my last life. The night Sue Annie slit her wrists, I heard crying at the far end of the hallway in the dorm. It wasn't Sue Annie crying, but her roommate. By the time they found her, blood had already run from the edge of the bed to the floor, staining those pink bunny slippers a dark red. The ambulance came, but they couldn't save her. And then everyone blamed me this time. The script was different. I didn't call the police, and I wasn't the one who exposed it. The surveillance footage captured her, pouring water from start to finish. Security found the sulfuric acid, and the vice principal called the police. None of it had anything to do with me. I was just an innocent classmate who knew nothing. But I know they'll still blame me because I'm Yang Zanhin. Because in everyone else's story, I was born to be the one who takes the fall. 13. When Zayapinji stood up, he staggered and only steadied himself with a hand on the edge of the table. His face was awful to look at, his lips pale, the veins at his temples bulging faintly. The acid was working its way through his esophagus, burning bit by bit, like a red-hot wire slowly being forced downward. I remembered how in my past life, I lay beside the sink in the chemistry lab while Hoping tipped the bottle toward my mouth. His expression as gentle as if he were pouring a cup of tea. He said, "Taste it yourself and see whether it really kills. And if you die, then go keep her company." By then, my throat had already been burned to a pulp, and I couldn't make a sound. If I could have spoken, I would have asked him one thing. When you feel sorry for her, have you ever thought that I hurt too? I don't need to ask now because I already know the answer. He never thought about it. Just like when Swanee poured sulfuric acid into the whole class's cups. She never thought anyone would be hurt. They were the same kind of people born to suit each other. One pours poison into a cup. The other forces it down someone else's throat. One plays innocent. The other plays righteous. They fit together perfectly. Xiaoping walked over to me, looked down at my water cup, then looked at me. "You didn't drink it." His voice was a little hoarse. "No," I said. His brows drew together deeply, as if he were trying to solve a riddle he couldn't crack. The whole class had drunk it. Swanee had drunk it. He had drunk it. Everyone had drunk it. So why hadn't I? He opened his mouth, wanting to ask something, but in the end, he didn't say a word. I didn't explain it to him. I picked up that half cup of water and carefully tucked it into the side pocket of my backpack, then zipped it shut. I did it very slowly, very carefully, as if I were handling something precious. Zhou Pingqi watched my movements, his expression growing more and more complicated. "Jinhin," he finally asked, "what exactly was in that glass of water?" I raised my head and looked into his eyes. There was confusion in those eyes, unease and a hint of fear just beginning to take root. Not fear of the sulfuric acid. He had already drunk it, so fear no longer mattered. It was a deeper fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear that he had suddenly realized he had never truly known me at all. I smiled at him. That smile was faint and fleeting, like a breeze skimming across a lake, vanishing before even a ripple could spread. "Nothing," I said. "I just couldn't bear to drink it." After Sue Annie was taken away, the atmosphere in the classroom turned oppressively tense. It was a strange mood. Not sorrow, not anger, but a collective daze. Everyone's mind was working frantically, trying to come up with an explanation for what had just happened that would make them feel better. Sue Annie didn't do it on purpose. The bottle her mother gave her, she thought it was disinfectant. She was just too innocent and got used by someone. The sulfuric acid must have been secretly swapped out of the lab by someone. And Annie knew nothing about it. Theories like these were more and more absurd. But every single one of them had gone through the minds of the students in Class 3 at least 3 times. Because admitting that Sue Annie did it on purpose would be the same as admitting you were a fool. Being fooled for 3 years by someone who called you baby in that sweet syrupy voice every day. Then drinking the sulfuric acid she handed you and still smiling as you said, "It's good." The truth was too painful. It hurt so much that no one wanted to face it, so they were avoiding it. Avoiding it by hating me. 14. Yongzin. Why didn't you stop everyone just now? The first to lash out was Lin Kiki. She had already finished throwing up, but what came up wasn't food. It was mucus streaked with blood. Her doll-like face was filled with malice, and there was still a trace of dark red residue at the corner of her mouth that she hadn't wiped away. Her eyes were red, whether from vomiting too hard or from wanting to cry. No one knew, but there was not a hint of fragility in her tone, only aggression. I looked up at her. Why should I stop everyone? You clearly saw Annie pouring something out. Link's voice rose. You were sitting there pretending to sleep. You think I didn't know? You saw everything. Why didn't you say anything? The classroom fell silent. All eyes turned on me like needles. I swept the room and saw a sea of familiar faces. Some nodding, some frowning, some looking at me as if to say, I knew it. They needed a scapegoat, and I gave them one. I saw her pouring something. I said, standing up and meeting Lin's gaze heated. But I didn't know what she was pouring. I thought she was adding it to her own drink. Just like she said. Link's lips trembled. Why, you did it on purpose. You've never gotten along with our Annie. You were dying for something bad to happen to her. I've never gotten along with her. I tilted my head. I helped her every time she asked. Gave her a gift for her birthday. And visited her. When she was sick. Which I have saw me not getting along with her. Lin Kiki was left speechless because she couldn't find any proof because the truth was in her past life. Yangs and Jean may not have liked Sue Annie's behavior, but she had never shown it. She kept it in for 3 years, right up until her death. All right, enough. Stop arguing. Someone shouted from the back. What's the point of arguing about this now? Get her checked first and see what's going on. Exactly. Yen Hanjin didn't do anything wrong. She's not a prophet. How was she supposed to? No, it was sulfuric acid. Someone was speaking up for me. It wasn't because they believed me, but because the situation was still unclear. Once the police exposed Sue Annie's disinfect and bottle story for the lie it is. Once everyone is forced to face that brutal truth, the very people who spoke up for me will be the first to turn on me. That's human nature for you. Xiaoyingi had said nothing the whole time. He sat in his seat, one hand pressed hard against his stomach, the other clutching in. Empty cup, his knuckles white. His face was beyond pale now. It had taken on a sickly washed-out gray like a wall battered by rain for far too long. His lips were trembling, not from the cold, but from the pain. The sulfuric acid in that cup was already working its way through his esophagus. It wasn't the kind of mild burn I had suffered in my past life, but a real searing pain that burned through the mucous membrane inch by inch. Sue Annie had gone harder this time than she had before. I saw it, clearly. While pretending to doze, she had poured at least twice as much into the cup as she had last time. I don't know why she used more. Maybe she wanted it to be more fun. Or maybe she sensed something and wanted to make sure everyone would remember it. Whatever the reason, the result was the same. 15 had drunk the entire cup. Every breath he took now felt like swallowing shards of glass. The burning in his throat was not a single red-hot wire, but a whole handful of red-hot nails driving from his throat all the way down to his stomach, each one seeping scalding poison. He pressed his forehead against the edge of the table, cold sweat streaming down from his temples and dripping onto the tabletop, pulling into a small puddle. He didn't make a sound because he couldn't. His throat was already swelling, his vocal cords red and raw from sulfuric acid, and every attempt to speak felt like sanding his own windpipe with sandpaper. But more importantly, he couldn't show pain at a time like this. Pain meant weakness, and weakness meant he was no longer the knight who protected the princess. He was still holding on. Holding on for whom? For Sue Annie, who was already gone. For the classmates who were still secretly watching him out of the corners of their eyes. For himself watching him. I suddenly remembered a detail from my last life. In my last life after Swanee was caught, Chopinji came to see me. He didn't yell at me. didn't hit me, and didn't even say anything harsh. He just stood in front of me and said one thing in a very calm voice. Sinhin, do you know why Annie did this? Because she felt this world had treated her badly. She just wanted everyone else to feel her pain. 2. I froze at the time. And not because those words made any sense, but because they were absurd beyond belief. Someone the whole class had practically been holding in the palm of their hand thought the world had been unfair to her. Someone who had everything thought she was the victim. She poured sulfuric acid into someone else's cup, not because she was evil, but because she was in pain. The expression on Xiaoping's face was serious when he said this. He really believed Swanee was the victim. Now he was a victim. 2. The cup of sulfuric acid was burning through his esophagus, and he would feel that searing pain all the way from his throat down to his stomach. Every breath like swallowing fire. He would go to the hospital and find that his esophagus had been burned beyond recognition. He would suffer. And then would he think Sue Annie was a victim? 2. I guess so. Because hating Sue Annie was too painful. To admit that the goddess he had loved for 3 years was a mad woman who had deliberately poisoned someone. To admit that she had treated him like a disposable pawn. This truth burned even more than sulfuric acid. So, he wouldn't admit it. He would find 10,000 reasons to forgive her and then transfer all his hatred onto someone else. That person was, of course, me. A muffled groan came from the corner. I turned and saw Jashu bend over, one hand braced on the desk and the other covering her mouth. Her face was bowed, so low I couldn't see it clearly, but a drop of dark red liquid seeped through her fingers and fell onto her white school uniform skirt. Blood. Not the thin trickle that seeps from the corner of the mouth. Real blood. A lot of it surging up from her throat. Xiao Shu was the kind of girl who blended into the background in class. Average grades. Quiet personality. Never involved in any cliques. In my previous life, she drank that glass of water, went to the hospital to have her stomach pumped, and came back without scolding me or speaking up for me. She only looked at me in silence, and there was something in that look that I couldn't quite put into words. Not sympathy, not anger, more like exhaustion in this life. She drank even more sulfuric acid. 16. Now the blood in her mouth was pouring out like a broken dam, dripping down her chin onto the desk and splattering into dark red blossoms. The girl beside her screamed and jumped back, knocking a chair over with a harsh crash. Xiao lurched forward, her forehead striking the edge of the desk with a dull thud, and then her body began to slide downward like a sack of cement tipped on its side. Someone was shouting, "Call a doctor!" Someone else was yelling, "An ambulance!" Another person crouched down to help her, but the moment their hand touched her shoulder, they jerked it back, because in that instant raised her head, and everyone saw her face. Her lips were gone, not as an exaggeration, but literally physically gone when the sulfuric acid was poured into her mouth. The first thing it hit was her lips. Her lower lip looked like wax scorched by fire, covered in a gray, white layer of necrotic tissue, blood seeping from the edges, a split running through the center to reveal the bright red flesh underneath. Her eyes were wide open, her pupils filled with fear. That fear couldn't be summed up by the words, "I am scared." It was something more primal, more animalistic, a gut-level instinct for death. Her body was telling her, "You've been poisoned. You're badly injured. You might die." Her body wasn't lying. I only learned later that in this life, Swanee had poured sulfuric acid into the cup at a concentration more than twice as strong as before. At some point, she must have snapped and decided, "If we're going to play, let's play big." Or maybe she had always intended to make everyone pay, including Zhao Pingyi. But at that moment, no one in the classroom knew any of that. All they knew was someone was vomiting blood, someone's mouth had been burned raw, and someone was thrashing on the floor. The whole classroom was like a pot of boiling porridge with screams, cries, and retching all mixed together. The air was thick with the sour stench of acid and the smell of blood. Some people were on the phone, their shaking fingers unable to punch in the right number, screaming into the receiver, "Come quick! Someone help!" Others were slumped in their chairs, faces turning blue, lips turning purple, eyes half open, as if struggling on the edge of unconsciousness. Lin Kiki stood next to Jao, her face as white as paper. She had vomited blood, 2. But not nearly as much as Jo. A streak of dark red blood clung to the corner of her mouth, making her doll-like face look eerie beyond words. Like a dirty doll. Yanhin. She suddenly screamed. Her voice, so sharp it seemed about to pierce everyone's eardrums. Why didn't you drink it? Why didn't you drink that glass of water? Those words fell like a pebble into a lake, sending ripples spreading outward in expanding circles. Everyone's eyes turned to me somehow. Sitting on my left was clutching his throat and staring at me with bloodshot eyes. The look on his face was no longer anger. It was hatred. Naked, unmasked hatred. He had just thrown up 3 times. And the 3rd time, it was all blood clots. Dark red, like shattered jelly. His girlfriend, Chinsiki, was crying beside him, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Between sobs, she kept wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth with tissues, and soon the tissues were stained red. Yeah, Yang Jinhin. Everyone in the class drank it except you. Chinsiki looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Do you know something? She definitely knows. Lick's voice turned even shriller. She's been pretending to be asleep the whole time. She saw Annie pouring something in. She knows everything, and she just won't tell us. Yang Zanhen, how can you be so vicious? You watched us drink sulfuric acid and didn't say a word. Are you even human? The insults surged toward me like a tide. Wave after wave, dense as a summer downpour. I stood in the middle of all those voices, my expression as calm as a still lake. They weren't wrong. I did know. I really did watch them drink it. I really didn't say a single word. 17, but I felt no guilt, no panic, and not the slightest trace of remorse because in my last life, they did the same thing to me. Watched as sulfuric acid was poured into my mouth. Not one of them spoke. Not one reached out. Not one called for it to stop. When twisted off the cap, somehow held down my head, Chinsiki stood guard at the door, and Leaky blocked anyone who might come down the hallway. They weren't bystanders. They were accomplices. Now, every one of them has drunk that cup of sulfuric acid, and every one of them is enduring the pain I once suffered in my last life. Fair. No, it isn't. What I went through back then was far worse than what they're enduring now. Not because the acid was stronger, but because it was poured into me by the person I loved. But this time around, I'm not going to dwell on whether it's fair or not. This time, I'll do only one thing and watch. That's enough. Zoping's voice came from the corner, hoarse and barely audible, but the commanding tone in it made everyone fall silent. He braced himself on the table and slowly got to his feet, moving so slowly he looked like an 80-year-old man. His face was ghastly pale, his eye sockets deeply sunken, and his lips were covered in cracked streaks of blood. It took him about 10 seconds to straighten himself up, and then he walked step by step toward me, standing between me and those people. Don't say another word. His voice sounded like sandpaper scraping across glass. Every word tinged with blood. Gin did nothing. Wrong. I looked at his back as he stood in front of me. The back of his school uniform was soaked through, and I couldn't tell whether it was sweat or blood. His shoulders were trembling faintly, not from the cold, but from the pain. His esophagus was being burned through inch by sulfuric acid. Every breath felt like swallowing fire. But he still stepped in front of me. It was such a touching scene. If I didn't know how he had treated me in my previous life, I would have been moved to tears. But I remember the look on his face when he pointed the bottle at my mouth. Gentle, calm, even with a hint of pity, as if he were doing something perfectly justified, as if he were carrying out justice on heaven's behalf. Penji, you're protecting her. Lick's voice was full of disbelief. She watched us drink sulfuric acid. You got burned, too. Don't you hate her? Zoping said nothing. His shoulders were shaking even harder now. One hand braced on the table beside him, his knuckles bone white. I don't hate her, he said. In that moment, he said those words. Did he even believe them himself? I don't know, but I do know Leaky didn't believe it. Somehow didn't believe it. Chinsiki didn't believe it. Not a single person in this classroom believed it because they needed someone to hate. And that person from beginning to end was me. Hasty footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not the footsteps of one person, but several. A jumble of sounds overlapping one another. The click of dress shoes against the floor. The rumble of a stretcher's wheels over the tiles. The crackling hiss of a walkie-talkie. The door was pushed open. It wasn't one person, but a group. Doctors in white coats, police officers in dark blue uniforms, and staff in security uniforms rushed in all at once. 7 or 8 of them blocking the classroom doorway completely. The doctor in front was a woman in her 40s with short hair. Her expression, so stern she looked like a statue. Her gaze swept across the classroom. And the moment she saw Xiao, her pupils contracted sharply. "Send this one first," she said, pointing at Xiao, her voice tight with urgency. "Severe burns. Get her on a stretcher now." 18. 2 paramedics rushed over and lifted off the floor. Her school uniform skirt was soaked in blood, and the skin around her mouth had turned pitch black. She was limp as a rag doll as they carried her out. Her eyes were still open, staring straight up at the ceiling, her pupils unfocused. No one knew if she was still conscious. "Who else drank it?" the doctor asked the class, turning around, her voice urgent. "I drank it. I did. 2. I had a cup. I only took 2 sips." The voices surged in from all directions, rising and falling like a bizarre symphony. Every face was written with fear. The kind of fear that says, "My body is burning from the inside, and there's nothing I can do." The doctor's expression darkened. She strode up to Lin Kiki, grabbed her chin, and pried open her mouth for a look. The inside of Lick's mouth was a shocking red. Her tongue was covered in white, ulcerated spots, and deep in her throat, swollen mucosa could be seen trembling faintly. Severe burns sent her. The doctor let go and turned to the next person when somehow had his mouth pried open. He gagged, and a wave of sour fluid mixed with blood came up, splattering onto the doctor's white coat sleeve. She didn't dodge it. She just frowned, glanced down the back of his throat, then shook her head. "This one's worse. Straight to ICU. Prep him. ICU. Intensive care unit." Those 3 words exploded in the classroom like a bomb, and everyone's faces changed. A moment ago, some people were still forcing a brave face, saying things like, "He should be fine, right? Or maybe it just burns a little." No one said another word. ICU isn't a place to joke about. Everyone knew exactly what it meant to end up there. "Doctor, am I going to die?" It was Chinsiki who asked that question. She was leaning against somehow, her tears long dried up, her eyes red as a rabbit's, the blood on her lips already congealed into a dark red scab. The doctor glanced at her but didn't answer. That silence itself was the answer. People in the classroom were taken out in batches. There weren't enough stretchers, so some were helped out, some were carried out on someone's back, and some, while walking, suddenly bent over, bracing themselves against the wall as they retched up mouthfuls of bloody water. The hallway was filled with crying and coughing, mingling together like a dirge for the dead. Jopini was in the last group to leave. He had stayed beside me the whole time and hadn't gotten on a stretcher first. His complexion was beyond pale now. It was a nearly translucent ash white, as if all the blood in his body had been drained out. His lips were split in several places, and with every breath, fresh beads of blood seeped out, shining. He turned and looked at me, his voice as faint as a wisp of smoke. "Are you really okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "I didn't drink it." "Of course. I'm fine." Zoping looked at me, and there was something deeply complicated in his eyes. Not relief, not gratitude, more like resentment. Resentment over why everyone in the class drank it, but I didn't. Resentment over why the goddess he'd held on a pedestal had ruined him like this while his girlfriend came through unscathed. Resentment over why fate spared me at the very last moment but wouldn't spare him. He knew that thought was wrong, but he couldn't help it. People are like that when things go wrong for you and you see someone else perfectly fine. A dark, unspeakable feeling starts to creep in. Why should they be okay? Why are you fine? 19, joping. "Let's go." The doctor called from the doorway. He gave me one last look, then turned and followed the stretcher team out of the classroom. His back was hunched like a bamboo stalk bent under pressure, and each step was painfully slow, as if he were treading on shattered glass. The classroom was finally empty. I was the only one left. Sunlight poured in through the window, falling across the chaos of desks and the floor. There were blood stains on the tabletops, vomit, overturned water cups, scattered textbooks, and test papers. The air was thick with a sharp, sour smell mixed with a rusty tang of blood. I stood amid those traces, looking down at the half cup of water in my hand. The water's surface was as still as a mirror, reflecting my eyes. Those eyes were different from the ones I had in my previous life. Back then, they were full of grievance and confusion. Why did you kill me even after I saved you? In this life, there were only 2 words in my eyes. Serves you right. I put the cup back into the side pocket of my backpack, zipped it up, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out of the classroom. The hallway was eerily quiet. Everyone had been taken to the hospital. My footsteps echoed alone in the stairwell, one after another, like a heartbeat. When I reached the first floor, my phone vibrated. It was a message in the class group chat. I opened it and saw a voice message from Leaky. When I played it, her voice came through the phone, no longer sharp and aggressive like before, but hoarser and choked with tears, as if a wad of cotton had been stuffed in her throat. My throat hurt so much. The doctor said, my esophagus is burned, and I need to stay in the hospital for observation. I probably won't be able to take tomorrow's college entrance exam. Why? Why is Yongzhen fine? Why did she get to be okay? The voice message cut off there. It wasn't that she didn't want to speak anymore. She couldn't speak at all. Her throat had swollen so badly that she couldn't make a sound. I didn't answer and shoved the phone back into my pocket. Tomorrow's college entrance exam. In my previous life, I didn't even get to take it because they ruined me in this life. Every single one of them had swallowed that cup of sulfuric acid, and every one of them would be lying in a hospital bed tomorrow with tubes down their throats and their stomachs turning. No one would be able to take tomorrow's college entrance exam except me. The entire school building was empty with only the wind passing through the hallways, lifting the exam papers and scraps of paper off the floor. I stood in front of the bulletin board in the lobby on the first floor, looking at the exam room layout posted there. Red markings, black print, and rows of unfamiliar admission numbers. Tomorrow I'll be sitting here seated in one of the desks in this exam room, pen in hand finishing those 4 test papers, and then leaving this place, leaving Swanee, leaving Xiaoping, leaving Lin Kiki somehow, and Shinseki, leaving everyone in this classroom, go somewhere no one knows me, and start over. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Joe Pinji, not a voice message but a text. He typed a line, deleted it, typed again, and from the typing indicator it was clear he'd hesitated for a long time. You have to do your best on the exam tomorrow. I stared at those words for 3 seconds. Then I typed 2 words and sent them. I will 20. After sending that message, I looked up at the blinding sky outside the lobby. The early summer sky was an impossible blue, cloudless like a huge, spotless mirror. In the distance, someone was running on the track, circling the red lanes over and over again. Some junior from the athletic training team, unaware of everything happening inside the teaching building. Tomorrow will be a beautiful day, perfect for an exam, perfect for revenge, perfect for watching the people who killed me in my previous life lying in hospital beds, listening to the broadcast in the hallway announce the college entrance exam is about to begin, while all they have at hand are 4 lines and the leads of heart monitors. In my last life, not a single one of them pitied me. In this life, I won't feel sorry for any one of them either. When I walked out of the school gate, the security guard glanced at me as if he wanted to say something, but stopped himself. He probably already knew what had happened that morning. The whole building had been surrounded by ambulances, so there was no way he couldn't know. "Girl, are you all right?" he asked. "I'm fine." I smiled at him. "The college entrance exam is tomorrow, so I'm heading back to study." The security guard nodded and watched my figure disappear around the corner of the street. As I walked home, the half cup of water in my backpack lay quietly in the side pocket, swaying gently with my steps. The sunlight was lovely, the breeze was soft, and the sycamore trees by the roadside cast dappled shadows. Everything felt just right. My phone vibrated one last time. It was a message Leaky had posted in the class group chat. It was only 1 sentence, but every word, and it seemed to tremble. The doctor said my esophagus was burned. I definitely can't take the exam tomorrow. 3 years. I waited 3 years. Young Jinhan, are you satisfied now? This time, I replied, take good care of your injury. By the time I got home, my mom was simmering soup in the kitchen. The smell of pork rib and lotus root soup drifted out from the kitchen, mixed with the warm, spicy aroma of ginger, making the whole house feel cozy. Hearing the door open, she poked her head out of the kitchen, an apron damped with water spots, a ladle still in her hand. "You're back. How was school today?" she asked it casually. "The way." Every parent of a senior in the final day before the college entrance exam would. She had no idea what had happened at school today. No idea about sulfuric acid. No idea about the ambulance. No idea that her daughter had just walked away and scathed from a carefully planned poisoning. "Pretty good," I said. I put my backpack in the entryway, changed into my slippers, and walked into the kitchen. The soup in the pot was bubbling away, and the smell of pork ribs kept drifting into my nose. I stood behind my mom, looking at her busy back, and suddenly felt my eyes sting in my last life. My mom only learned the truth after I died. When the police called her, she was at work. The voice on the other end asked, "Are you a family member of Yang Junhin?" And her first thought was that I'd been in a car accident. She rode her electric bike from the factory to the hospital, running 3 red lights along the way. By the time she got there, I was already on the operating table. She never got to see me one last time later. Her coworker told me that my mom didn't shed a single tear at the funeral. She just stood there in the memorial hall looking at my photo, motionless for a whole afternoon. On the way home, she collapsed and spent half a month in the hospital. By the time she was discharged, half her hair had turned white this time around. I would never let her go through that again. 21 Mom. I called out, tomorrow is the college entrance exam. Take me to the test center." My mom turned around and looked at me stunned for a moment. She probably hadn't expected me to ask her to take me. In my previous life, Yang and Jin had always carried everything on her own and never let her family worry. On the morning of the college entrance exam, she rode to the test center alone on her bicycle, and even breakfast was something she bought on the way. "Okay," she said, her eyes suddenly turning red. "Mom will take you." I nodded and turned back to my room the moment I closed the door. My tears finally fell, but not a sound came out. I couldn't let her hear me. After I finished crying, I washed my face, sat down at my desk, took that half cup of water out of my backpack, and placed it under the desk lamp. The warm yellow light shone through the glass, casting a soft glow over the surface of the water. It looked utterly ordinary, no different from any other cup of water. But it wasn't ordinary at all. It was the biggest trump card in my hand, the most important bargaining chip in the game ahead. I didn't know how much sulfuric acid Swanee had put in it, or how high the concentration was, or what would happen if someone drank it. I hadn't sent it for testing, and I didn't need to know because this cup of water wasn't meant to be drunk. It's there to be used as proof to prove that son Annie poured something into the cup to prove that her so-called disinfectant was a lie from the very beginning, to prove that the innocent little baby everyone talked about was actually a deliberately poisoning criminal. But it's not time yet. I'll wait. I'll wait until everyone pins their hopes on me, until they're begging me, through tears, to testify, until son Annie kneels in front of me and says she was just kidding. Then I'll set the cup on the table, look at everyone's faces, and slowly say, "This is the sulfuric acid son Annie poured. That's what you drank." I kept one cup because I knew all along. I'll watch their expressions go from hope to despair, from pleading to rage, and from rage to terror. It would be quite a sight. I carefully put the water bottle back into the side pocket of my backpack, zip it up, then open my math mistake notebook, and start reviewing. Tomorrow is the math exam. In my last life, I lost far too many points on math tests, not because I couldn't solve the problems, but because my head was full of the ways Swanee looked back at me when they took her away. That hatred made it impossible for me to concentrate in the exam room. Even the simplest multiple-choice questions had to be read 3 times before I could make sense of them this time. That won't happen this time. My mind has nothing but the problems. I went through them one by one. Formulas, theorems, solution steps. Everything flowed through my mind like water. My fingers flew across the scratch paper as I wrote, and I didn't have to hesitate on a single problem. The answers were as clear as if they'd been carved into my bones. It's not because I'm a genius. It's because I've already studied all of this for 2 lifetimes. By the time I reached the 3rd sheet of scratch paper, my phone vibrated. "Ping Chi." I didn't answer. He called 3 more times, and I still didn't pick up. Then he sent me a message long like it had taken him about 5 minutes to type. I set down my pen. picked up my phone, and glanced at it. Jinzin. I'm in the hospital. The doctor said my esophagus is severely burned. So I definitely won't be able to take the college entrance exam tomorrow. I've thought a lot and wanted to talk to you. Why were you ignoring me today? Did I do something wrong? If I did, tell me and I'll change. Shining. You're the most important person in my life. I don't want to lose you. 22. The most important person. He said the same thing in my previous life. 2. Back before Swanee appeared, before everything went wrong, he kept my face, looked into my eyes, and said very seriously, Young Zinhin, you're the most important person in my life. I believed him. I spent 3 years turning myself into the person he wanted me to be. He didn't like me talking to other boys, so I stopped. He didn't like me wearing skirts, so I stopped wearing them. He said Swanee was cute and that I should be friends with her, so I became her friend. I slowly wore away my edges and forced myself into the mold he had drawn for me, thinking that would win his love. What did it get me? Sulfuric acid. I flipped my phone face down on the desk and kept working on the problems. The sky outside the window was slowly growing dark. My mom knocked on the door and came in carrying a bowl of soup. She set it down on the corner of the desk, glanced at my open notebook of wrong answers, then at the phone lying face down and moved her lips as if to ask something, but didn't. Get to bed early. She said, you'll need to be sharp tomorrow. Okay. When she reached the door, I suddenly called out to her, Mom. Yes. Do you trust me? She turned around and looked at me, her eyes carrying something hard to put into words. Not doubt, not confusion, but a deep, heavy tenderness. It was the kind of look only a mother gives her daughter. She didn't know what had happened, but she knew something had happened. I do, she said. No matter what happens. Mom trusts you. The door closed. I lowered my head and kept working on the problems that night. I studied until 1 o'clock in the morning, going over every mistake I'd made. After I got into bed, I stared at the ceiling for a long time, replaying tomorrow's plan over and over in my head like a movie. Every detail, every step, every place where something could possibly go wrong. I had to make sure everything was foolproof. At 6 o'clock the next morning, the alarm went off. I got up, washed up, put on my school uniform, sealed the half cup of water with plastic wrap, tucked it into the innermost pocket of my backpack, and wrapped it in my clothes. My mom was already in the kitchen frying 2 eggs, warming up milk, and cutting up a plate of fruit. Eat more, she said, sliding the plate toward me. The exam takes a lot out of you. I ate a lot, and I finished everything because I needed strength, energy, and to be in my best condition. Today was the day I'd been waiting for through 2 college entrance exams, and I wasn't going to let anyone or anything affect me. When I left the house, my mom tipped me there on her electric bike on a June morning. The breeze against my face felt cool and refreshing. Pink mimosa blossoms were blooming all along the roadside, and the air carried a faint floral fragrance. I sat on the back of the bike with my arms around my mom's waist, my chin resting on her shoulder, watching the streets slowly recede behind us. Nervous? She asked. Not at all. Mom will pick you up after the exam. Okay. The exam was being held at one middle school. Not ours. The school gate was crowded with parents and students. Some were hugging, some were crying, some were doing one last review of their study materials, and some were crouched by the roadside eating steamed buns. Traffic police in uniform were keeping order, and red cordons kept the crowd apart. Over and over, the loudspeaker played, Please line up to enter the exam hall. I took my admission ticket and pencil case from my mom behind me. She called out, Jenhin. I turned back to look at her. Sunlight fell on her face. There were tears in her eyes, but they didn't fall. She smiled at me and gave me a thumbs up. You can do this. 23. I nodded and turned to walk into the exam hall. When I found my seat, I first put my backpack away, then reached into the innermost compartment and took out that half cup of water to make sure it was intact. I set the cup on the corner of the desk where sunlight hit it and cast a small patch of reflected light. The proctor was a middle-aged woman wearing glasses. She glanced at the cup of water on my desk and frowned. No drinks are allowed in the exam hall. It's just water. I said, Teacher, my throat is bothering me. The doctor told me to drink more water. She looked at me, She probably figured there was no need for a college entrance exam student to lie over a cup of water. So she said nothing more. The bell rang. When the Chinese exam paper was handed out, I took a deep breath and then started answering the questions. Question 1. Modern Chinese, reading comprehension. Question 2. Reading classical Chinese poetry and prose. Question 3. Language use essay. I read the essay prompt. Reflections on choice. Choice. I picked up my pen and wrote the first line on the answer sheet. The most important choices in life are often not about what you do, but what you choose not to do. My hand was trembling slightly, not from nerves, but from something I had been holding in for a long time. Something I could finally let out onto the page. Word by word, I wrote into the essay the things I had never said in my past life. Write about a person who chooses silence, not because she is indifferent, but because she has already tried every kind of kindness. Write about a person who chooses to stand by and watch, not because she is heartless, but because her kindness had once been trampled underfoot and deemed worthless. Write about a person who chooses revenge, not because she doesn't understand forgiveness, but because the people who hurt her never believed they had done anything wrong. When I wrote the last sentence, my pen tip hesitated for a moment. Some people choose to become angels, and some people choose to become demons. As for me, I choose to be myself, a whole free self that no one can hurt anymore. The bell rang. I sat down my pen and flipped the paper over. Face down on the desk. In the exam room, some people were sighing, some were stretching, and some were comparing answers. I took one last look at my essay paper, and the corners of my mouth lifted slightly. This was the best essay I had ever written in my life. Not because the writing was brilliant, but because every single word was true math in the afternoon. This was the subject I had failed the hardest in my previous life. But this time, the moment the paper was handed out, my mind was crystal clear. Multiple choice, fill in, D-link, and open-ended questions. I worked through them one by one without hesitation or getting stuck. Every formula and theorem seemed alive, dancing through my mind. The last big problem was calculus, the final boss question. In my previous life, I had left it blank. This time, I spent 15 minutes writing from the first step to the last, neat and complete, without skipping a single step. The moment I put down my pen, I looked at the sky outside the window. The sunshine is still lovely. It was the second day of the college entrance exam, with English and the comprehensive science paper. English was my strong suit. In my last life, I had relied on it to pull up my score. This time, I worked even faster. Before the listening section had even started, I had already gone through the multiple choice questions in front. By the time the listening ended, I finished the multiple choice close and reading comprehension in one smooth stretch. The essay was a formal letter with handwriting, so neat it looked printed. The comprehensive science paper. Physics, chemistry, biology. The big physics problem was on electromagnetic induction. I drew the equivalent circuit diagram and worked it out 3 times to make sure the answer was right. The chemistry inference question was on organic chemistry, and it took me less than 10 minutes to derive all the structural formulas. The biology genetics question was on Mendel's laws. I drew the pedigree chart, calculated the probabilities, and wrote every step out in great detail. 24 or 5 minutes before handing in my paper, I checked every answer sheet again to make sure I hadn't left anything blank or filled in any bubbles wrong. Then I lifted my head and looked at the clock at the front of the exam hall. The second hand moved forward 1 notch at a time, making a faint ticking sound. There were still 4 minutes left until the gallo ended. 4 minutes until I left the school. Left these people, and left behind the nightmare of my last life. The bell rang. The exam is over. Please stop writing. Everyone was cheering. Some tossed their papers into the air. Some hugged their classmates and cried. And some stood on their chairs shouting, "We're free." The proctors didn't stop them because the college entrance exam was over. And nothing that happened in this classroom mattered anymore. I slowly put my pen back in my pencil case, tucked away my admission ticket, and then picked up that half-full cup of water from the corner of the desk. The cup was still cool to the touch. The surface of the water was still calm. This cup of water had stayed with me through the entire 2 days of the college entrance exam. From the first Chinese exam to the final integrated science test, it had always been there. quietly sitting at the corner of my desk like a silent witness. I put the cup back into the deepest part of my backpack, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out of the exam hall. The moment sunlight hit my face, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The air smelled gardenias. My mom was waiting for me at the school gate, holding a bouquet of sunflowers, her eyes curved with a smile. The first thing she said when she saw me wasn't, "How did the exam go? But are you tired?" "Not really," I said. "Mom, I want to eat your sweet and sour pork ribs." Okay. I'll make it as soon as we get home." I wrapped my arm around hers and walked out of the crowd, out of the school gate, and out of this place that had let me be reborn and kept me waiting for 18 years. My phone buzzed. A message from the class group chat. I hadn't checked it for 2 days, and thousands of unread messages had piled up. I opened it and skimmed through them, and a smile slowly spread across my face. The police had already confirmed that Sue Annie's claim about disinfectant was a lie. The label on that small brown glass bottle clearly read sulfuric acid in bold black characters, and it had been taken out of the lab by her mother. Sue Annie's excuse that she thought it was disinfectant shattered like glass shards in the face of hard evidence. She has been officially arrested and charged with the offense of releasing hazardous substances not attempted but completed because people were injured. In fact, all 42 students in the class except me were hurt. 11 of them were seriously injured, including Zioyu. Her esophagus was badly burned, and she needs esophageal dilation surgery. She may have permanent swallowing problems afterward. The doctor said her vocal cords were also damaged and her voice may stay hoarse forever. Laniki underwent a skin graft on her lips using skin taken from the inside of her thigh. After the surgery, her lips will be twice as thick as a normal person's, looking like 2 flesh-colored caterpillars crawling on her face. She posted a long message in the class group chat saying, "I'd rather die than live with this face." And then there was nothing after that. Somehow was in the worst condition. He drank a whole cup, and he drank the fastest. His esophagus had suffered third-degree burns, and his stomach was badly burned as well. The doctor said his digestive system might be permanently damaged, and from now on he might only be able to eat liquid food. He sent a voice message in the group chat. His voice, so faint it was like a mosquito's buzz, broken and halting. After only 3 words, he burst into tears. "I'm in so much pain." 25. Shinseki was vomiting blood for 2 days and was rushed into the ICU. She stayed there for a full day before being moved out. Her boyfriend Sanho was in another ward, and they couldn't even see each other. She sent a message in the group chat saying, "Sunho's mom said that once we're better, she'll let us get engaged," with a smiling emoji. No one replied to her because everyone knew that after Sunho was discharged, whether he could even eat normally was still an open question. Whether his body could still support a normal future, no one knew. And then there was Joe Pingchi. He sent a lot of messages. At first, he asked Shinjin, "Are you there? How did you do on the exam? I miss you so much." Then came long monologues saying that while lying in his hospital bed, he had thought a lot, that he regretted it, that he should never have treated Sue Annie that way before, and that the person he cared about most was mean. Then the messages stopped. They stopped for a whole day. The next night, he sent another one. Just a single sentence. "The doctor said my vocal cords were burned, and I may never be able to speak again." I stared at that line for a long time. I may never speak again. Last life when he forced acid down my throat. I didn't lose my voice. My throat was burned raw and horsero, but I could still make sounds. The last word I ever said on the operating table was, "Why? Why?" They never answered. Now Joingi won't answer either. Not because he doesn't want to, but because he can't. His vocal cords were destroyed by the sulfuric acid he drank himself, and that cup of acid was poured by Sue Annie, the woman he loved most. Fate's dark humor is more brilliant than anything any screenwriter could come up with. I scrolled through the class group chat, then set my phone on the table, picked up that half cup of water, and walked out to the balcony. The sun was sinking below the horizon, and the clouds at the edge of the sky were stained orange-red, layered on top of one another like paint piled up in an oil painting. On a rooftop in the distance, someone was flying a kite, and a red butterfly swayed and fluttered in the evening breeze. I lifted the glass and held it up to the setting sun. The surface of the water caught the amber light like a glass of old wine. That glass of water had spent 2 days in my backpack, gone with me to the exam hall and stayed with me through every test paper. It bore witness to every word I wrote on the college entrance exam and to the story about choices I wrote in my own hand. Now its mission was complete. I went into the kitchen and poured the water from the glass into the sink. The water swirled as it rushed down the drain. Gurgling as it went, I turned on the tap and let it run for 2 minutes, making sure every last drop of sulfuric acid was diluted and washed away. Then I cleaned the glass and set it upside down on the drying rack. The glass was clean. The rabbit pattern on the side of the cup looked especially gentle in the glow of the setting sun. Crooked and uneven, like a child's doodle. I picked up my phone, took a photo of the rabbit, and posted it to Moments. The caption had only 2 words, clean. Then I left the class group chat. I deleted all my classmates' contact info, including Pingshi. Before I deleted him, he sent one more message. I only saw the last half of it. Jinhin, please. What was he begging me for? To forgive him? To go to the hospital and see him? To not leave him? I didn't finish reading it. 26. I hit delete and erased his name from my contacts forever. Just as he had erased my life in our past life. Cleanly. Decisively. Leaving no trace what happened after that. I only heard about gradually from all sorts of sources. I didn't go to Sue Annie's trial the day it opened. Lin Kiki went. Her lips were covered with thick gauze, and she had lost a lot of weight. Sitting in the gallery, she cried so hard, her whole body trembled. She said she wasn't there to beg for leniency for Sue Annie. She was there for an answer. Why? Why did you hurt us? We were so good to you. Why would you still hurt us? Sue Annie stood in the defendant's dock, wearing an orange detention vest. Her hair had been cut short, the baby fat had faded from her face, and she looked 5 years older. She didn't cry, and she didn't say baby didn't mean it. She just kept her head down, looking at her hands, saying nothing. When the presiding judge asked whether she had anything to say, she looked up, let her gaze sweep across the gallery, and finally on an empty seat. That empty seat was where I was supposed to sit. I didn't go. Her lips moved slightly, and she said 3 words. No one heard what she said, but Lin Kiki later said in the group chat that she saw Sue Annie's lips move. She was saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Too late. Too late. When the sulfuric acid was poured into the cup, she didn't say she was sorry. When her classmates drank it, she didn't say she was sorry. Even when someone was coughing up blood, someone's mouth was rotting away, and someone was rushed to the ICU, she still didn't say she was sorry. Now she's talking because she got caught, because her future was ruined, because her sweet baby persona had collapsed, because no one would believe her anymore. Not because of guilt, but because she lost on the day the verdict came down. My mom was in the living room watching TV. The news ran. The story only 30 seconds long. A student surnamed Sue at a certain middle school has been sentenced to 7 years in prison according to law for putting sulfuric acid into the class drinking water. After watching it, my mom frowned and said, "That kid is way too cruel." I heard her from my room and didn't go out 7 years. 7 years later, she'll be 25. Can she start over after she gets out? Yes, but not everyone will be willing to give her a chance. That stain will stay on her, record forever. No university will want to poison her, and no company will hire someone who was pouring sulfuric acid into a classmate's cup back in high school. The moment the iron gate of the prison slammed shut, her sweet baby persona shattered into dust. Zoping's message after I deleted it somehow made its way back to me through someone else's phone. Leaky forwarded it. She probably thought I should see it. See what the man who had once been endlessly gentle with me had now become. It was a video. Xiaopi was lying in a hospital bed with a thick bandage wrapped around his neck. His lips were cracked and bleeding, and his eye sockets had sunk deeply in. He was holding up a sheet of paper on which shaky, crooked handwriting said, "Jansen, I'm sorry. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I only wish you well." At the end of the video, he opened his mouth as if to say something, but only a few muffled, breathy sounds came out. His vocal cords could no longer vibrate. The words he wanted to say were forever stuck in his throat, like acid clogging up the esophagus. When Leaky sent this video, she added a line. "He asked me to pass this on to you. He said, this was the last time he bothered you." 27. I didn't reply. I watched the video 3 times. The first time, what I saw was a patient. A poor, pitiful, sympathetic patient whose vocal cords had been burned by acid. On the second reading, I saw a hypocrite, someone who fawned before the goddess, treated his girlfriend with tenderness and care and always made the wrong choice when a decision had to be made. On the third reading, I saw a stranger who had nothing to do with me. I deleted the video. I didn't block Leaky because there was no need. She'd soon disappear from my life. Just like all of them, my life was a one-way road, and they'd already been left far behind. So far back, I couldn't even see their shadows. The day the college entrance exam results came out, I was watering the flowers on the balcony, and my phone rang. It was my mom screaming from the living room. She came running to my bedroom door with her phone in hand, trembling all over, tears streaming down her face. 73 points. You got 73 points. 703 points. 19th in the province. I sat down the kettle and took the phone to glance at it. That number sat quietly on the screen. Black iny font. Neither too big nor too small. It was a full 200 points higher than my score in my last life. Tsinghhua's admissions office called. My mother's voice trembled. They said, "As long as you're willing, you can choose any major you want." I stood on the balcony, looking up at the sky in the distance. The midsummer sky was a brilliant blue, with clouds drifting like cotton candy, and a white bird flew past the rooftop, its wings flashing in the sunlight. "Okay," I said that night while I was packing. I dug the cup out from the deepest part of my backpack. The rabbit design on the cup was still crooked and childlike, like a doodle drawn by a little kid. A faint ring of water stains remained at the bottom. That was the trace left behind after the last drop of sulfuric acid evaporated. I took the cup out onto the balcony and held it up to the moonlight. Moonlight passed through the cup wall, casting a tiny patch of silver white light on the floor. In my last life, this cup of water was poison. In this lifetime, this cup of water is the evidence now. It means nothing. It's just an empty cup, a vessel that once held sulfuric acid and hope. I placed the cup in the most conspicuous spot on my desk, not because I couldn't let it go, but because I needed a reminder of how dark the human heart can be, a reminder not to become that kind of person. Tsinghhua's admission letter arrived in August. The red envelope, the gold embossed letters. Zabriki. I stood in the living room holding it while my mom took pictures next to me, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone steady. My dad rushed back from the construction site, still covered in dust without even having time to brush it off, and crouched on the floor, staring at it for a long while. In the end, he said, "My daughter's got promise." In the Class 3 group chat, someone posted a screenshot. It was Tsinghua University's admission status page with my name and exam number on it. Below the screenshot was a long string of ellipses. No one said a word. No one congratulated me. No one scolded me either. They just stood there in silence looking at that name, that school, and the person they had once hurt, betrayed, and abandoned, as that person walked toward a place they could never reach. Leniki scored just over 400 points and went to a vocational college. Because of health reasons. Somehow took a year off and will retake the exam next year. Chinsiki went to a local second-year university and majored in marketing. Xiaoyu didn't take the college entrance exam. Her esophagus was still recovering. Zhou Pingqi didn't either. 28, he had voice cord surgery twice, but neither operation was very successful. His mother said that at home, he would write a lot of notes every day. Write one. Tear it up. Tear one up. Write another. Then tear that one up. 2. No one knew what those notes said, but he did write one to me. Passed alone through Linkiki. It was a neatly folded note with just one sentence on it. Shinjin, the thing I regret most in my life is not cherishing you the way I should have. I didn't reply. I folded the note into an origami crane and put it in that rabbit mug. Not because I had forgiven him, but because I had let go of Beijing in September, with clear skies and soft clouds. I pulled my suitcase out of Beijing West Railway Station alone. The sunlight hit me full in the face, warm and bright. People flowed past in the streets, and no one knew me. No one knew my past, and no one would look at me with that complicated, hateful expression. My name is Yang Jin. I'm a freshman at Tsinghua University. I'm someone who clawed her way out of sulfuric acid. I lifted my head and looked up at the sky overhead, blue beyond belief, and drew a deep breath. There was no smell of sulfuric acid in Beijing's air. A new life had begun. And as for the consequences those people would face, I didn't need to lift a finger. The cups they picked up themselves had already settled every account for me. One by one. Cups can't talk, but they're more honest than any words.